Debbie, I didn't see you there.
Oh, I'm here. Debbie Deary, I'm a Precinct 6 rep, and I'm a resident of 19 Stedman Street. It's very difficult for me, so I hope it doesn't sound mungle jungle. Last month, I lost my husband, and I won't get into great detail, but I will tell you that I found him in his room, face down, and he was dead. And I dialed 911 on a cell phone, which I should know better. And I spoke to someone on the cell phone. I gave my address. In the meantime, my daughter called me back because her father was supposed to be picking her up to go to the registry. And I said, he's gone. I had told her before he had left. And when she called back, I said he died. I wasn't very plain in my wording. I didn't hear from anyone, so I went into my kitchen and I dialed 911 on my landline. And I waited. And I told the person that I spoke to that he was gone. And because he asked me if I wanted to do CPR, and I said no, he is gone. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And I waited at my front door to see. I don't even know where they came from. I don't recall what fire department they were from. And they were gathering all their gear, and I said, bring it back because he's gone. They insisted on bringing everything in the house. I got pushed aside. Where is he? And I followed her into the room, and she put her fingers on his neck. That was it. I will tell you, in February, and that's why I'm here, my husband, from a break-in that we had that I faced face-to-face with the person that broke into my house, I had dialed with the landline phone, and I had a Verizon emergency operator. That was 3 years ago, face-to-face. And that person questioned me. It was a Chelmsford line. The following day, they did a test, and it worked for my home, but it didn't work that night, and that was 7:30 at night. I would advise anybody, because of what happened in February, my husband had a blood pressure of 70/40. He could not breathe. He had, from my experience with the burglar in our home, he put the Chelmsford Police Department's number in his cell phone as his emergency number. I had gone upstairs and I fell asleep because I'm up most of the night, and I'd fallen into a deep sleep. And at 9 o'clock, that doorbell rang because he called. They opened the door and they yelled into the house, and they came faster than a 911 call. And that's what he did. And I didn't think the day that he died to go look for the Chelmsford phone book, because there was nothing I could do. He had oxygen in his room. And that's why I'm standing here, because if you have a loved one, and if you want to make sure that someone will come for you, if they have a chance, take that number of the Chelmsford Police Department and put it in your phone as your emergency number if you are in this town, and they will come.
Thank you.
Otherwise, I don't know what to say. I mean, the landline works better than a cell phone, and I realize that.
Yep. I know you've had a few particular issues,
yeah, well,
Debbie,
it's
but
very
that's good
unusual.
advice.
It's very unusual to happen twice to the same person. One for a break-in, that I had to go next door for them to use their phone after I called them my own landline phone. And then when somebody passes. So either way, I've had this experience more than one.
Right.
It was more, I don't know, which was more traumatic when I'm face to face with somebody with a hoodie on coming into my house that was already there.
Heavy?
That was traumatic.
No.
But what I'm saying is that under the circumstances, there was no bringing him back. So, but if you have a chance to do this, this is what I would advise. And I really don't want to see it regionalized. I did some research. We have more than 5,000 people in our town than what they do in their town. I think our town's too busy, and that's why we have 5 fire stations to get across with all the highways. I just don't think it's wise.
Okay.
So I thank you for listening to me. I'm sorry if I rambled on. Just wanted the people out there to know I am here, not for myself, here for anyone who has a loved one that they think they might have a chance
Mm-hmm.
to come back, okay?
Thank you.
In an emergency situation.
Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, Chief, is the direct line 978-256-25?
2521.
2521.
There's a 2541 number as well.
Okay. And that's also recorded, but it's an alternate way to get a hold of the police department if something happens.
Thank you, Bob.
Yep.
Would anyone else like to speak under open session?
Mr. Chairman, I'm Len Olenchek, the town meeting rep, precinct 8, and I'd like to just get a clarification. Can we ask questions, or questions can be asked after the presentation, or is it strictly left to open session? And that's in reference to the dispatcher.
The dispatchers, I would like to give them the opportunity to see the presentation and then ask questions.
So we
they
can
be
ask
provided with the
questions
information.
afterwards?
Yep, I will. I'll be asking the police chief, the fire chief, as well as the dispatchers. Yep, if they have any
Okay.
questions or comments.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. I know there's could be quite a few dispatchers in the room, so I would like to see if they can have one person who can consolidate the thoughts of the questions on behalf of the organization to keep things running smoothly, though. Would anyone else like to speak under open session? Hearing none, we'll move on to committee vacancies. Selectman Joyce?
Committee vacancies as of 8/31/2015. Board of Appeals has one opening for a 3-year term. Community Preservation Fund Committee has one opening for a 3-year term. Economic Development Commission has one opening for a 3-year term. Great Brook Farm Advisory Committee has one opening for 1 year. Land Management Subcommittee has one opening for 2 years. Public Celebrations Committee has 2 openings for 1 year. And the Tree Committee has one opening for 3 years. If you wish to apply, you can go online to www.townofchelmsford.us, and there will be a form up there that you can fill out and send to the town manager's office. Email is tmoffice@townofchelmsford.us. That's it.
Great, thank you. And Bob, before we move on, actually, one more point about the Regional Emergency Communications Center. There's probably a pretty strong possibility that because we're going to have a lot of input tonight, both from the presentation and from public safety personnel, it's likely the Board of Selectmen may want to wait and absorb all that information before voting. We do that typically on larger, more important items in the community. We don't always vote on it the same night we're provided with the information. So I just want everyone to feel comfortable that they can absorb all the information before making a decision tonight. Okay.
Thank you.
So why don't we move on to number 5, licenses. Okay, we have 4 one-day licenses this evening. Are any of the applicants here this evening who have applied for a one-day license who would like to speak on behalf of their application? Okay.
St. Martin's,
Yep.
I think you told them they didn't need to come.
Yeah, no, they certainly don't need to. Sometimes if they like to announce their event in their community, they certainly can. But seeing as there's no questions, do any members of the Board of Selectmen have any questions in regards to the licenses?
Not the first 4. That's all St. Martin's.
Yep. Would you like?
They've been 100
Do I
times.
handle them separately?
No, could you make one motion to approve them all as presented?
Okay.
Save a little time. Quite a few people here.
Okay, I move that we approve 4 one-day beer and wine licenses and 1-day all alcohol beverage licenses for,
Alcohol and 2 beer and wine.
yeah. Do we have to say who they're for, though?
There's a motion in the back.
Oh, is there? I missed it.
Yeah. Let me get it for you.
Oh, okay, thank you, Janet. I make a motion to approve the following one-day licenses for St. Martin's Armenian Church. All alcohol beverages on September 26, 2015 for the hours 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. All alcohol beverage on October 7th, 2015 for the hours of 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. Beer and wine on November 7th for the hours of 6 to 9 p.m. Beer and wine on November 2nd and November 21st, November 20th and 21st for the hours of 12 p.m. to 8 p.m. to be exercised on the premises at 180 Old Westford Road.
I'll second that.
Any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? That's unanimous. Great, thank you. Move on now to public hearings. We have one public hearing for Mark Vagnani from Light Tower Fiber Networks Underground Conduit Petition on Elizabeth Drive.
How you doing?
Good evening. Could you please state your name for the record?
Mark Vignani from Light Tower Fiber Networks.
Thank you, sir.
Light Tower proposes to place one 4-inch PVC conduit approximately 84 feet from utility pole 97 on Mill Street to a proposed light tower handhole on the private property at 2 Elizabeth Road, and continuing 174 feet on the private property into the building at 2 Elizabeth Road.
Thank you. Seems like a pretty straightforward petition. If you have no more comments, I will ask members of the public if anyone would like to speak on behalf of this public hearing. No residents would like to speak? Okay. Any questions from members of the board? I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Move to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
All in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? That's unanimous. Public hearing is closed. Any final questions or comments on the underground conduit petition on Elizabeth Drive?
Move to approve the underground conduit petition for 2 Elizabeth Drive as presented.
Thank you.
We got to vote, though. One moment. Sorry. Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? That's unanimous. I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, congratulations. Thank you. Okay. We have a continuation of a public hearing for an all-alcohol package store application. Ashish Patel, AH&MJ Triangle Corporation, doing that business as Triangle Package Store, 148 Groton Road, North Chelmsford. Is anyone?
That's what
Is
we're gonna
Angelique not coming? I thought she was, okay. The applicant has requested that they continue this, that the board continues this public hearing this evening. They would like additional time to respond to some questions from members of the board. So we will be continuing this public hearing to our next meeting, and it will remain open during that time.
Okay, I move we table this petition article.
Say continue the public hearing.
Oh, you want to continue it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Matt, do you want to see if anyone's here from the public to speak?
Sure. Yep, they
Before
weren't,
we-
yeah, they weren't
Well-
prepared that we were going to.
What?
In planning board, we would never do that because the other party wouldn't have an opportunity to respond. I don't know if it's wise. We should continue
Well,
it.
if they came, if anyone's here to speak, though, I don't think it's
We
very
should
fair.
continue it without testimony. Is it,
He says.
Paul? Should we continue it without testimony?
Yeah, I mean,
You can
But I know
take it.
my
I
experience.
think if we're going to allow any public input, but the applicant's not here and they requested a continuance, we could maybe accept it, but not have any deliberation around it personally amongst ourselves, but just allow people
Okay,
to speak into the
yeah.
record. But I'd ask board members not to have a dialogue without the applicant present. Would that be?
Yeah, that's
Fair to
fine.
everyone?
That's fine.
Okay, so before we continue the public hearing on this application, would anyone like to speak on behalf of it? Again, with the understanding that the applicant isn't here this evening, but since... Yes, please, feel free to come up to the podium and just please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Susan Olson. I live at 140 Groton Road. I just wanted to just make sure that the members of the board received a letter that my husband and I had sent in last week. We're opposed to this license being granted to the Triangle Store. I will come back on the 14th, but I just wanted to make sure that you had received our letter.
Okay.
Okay.
And we can make sure we read that into the record.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else here to speak tonight on behalf of this public hearing?
I was here, Anne Marie Del Rossi, 137 Groton Road. I was here 2 weeks ago, and I was under the understanding that this would be the night that things would be decided as far as whether this was going to happen or not. And I know that there are other people here. I don't know if people want to stand up and show their support as far as that, because you can't deliberate back and forth, right, tonight. But is there anybody else here that has been here tonight for that? Yeah.
No, and anyone who's here tonight, they can certainly come up to the podium and state their name and address and whether they're, in favor or opposed or whatever comments they have. We'll just keep our deliberation to when the applicant's here, but we are welcoming your input tonight if you have anything else you'd like to add, or anyone else in the audience.
Okay, so now what we're doing is coming back in October,
September 14th.
September 14th.
September 14th.
Two weeks.
September 14th?
2 weeks.
Okay.
And We typically wait at least 2 weeks. It doesn't necessarily mean that we always vote exactly in that time frame. Sometimes public hearings do get extended longer if additional questions come up or we need further clarification on things. But we certainly just don't vote on it the first night. That's basically our intent.
Right, because
in
that's what
delaying
happened
it.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So then for tonight, so now because he's not here, is that why we're waiting another 2
No,
weeks? Or how does that
We
work?
provided the applicant with some questions, and they need additional time to come up with all the answers to those questions. So they've asked for continuance.
Okay, great.
That's all.
Thank you.
Yep. You're welcome. We're still in the public hearing portion of the meeting. If anyone else who came tonight on behalf of this topic would like to speak. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to continue the public hearing.
I move that we continue the public hearing until our next meeting, September 14th,
Yes.
2015.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays or abstentions? That's unanimous. Now move on to agenda item number 7, reports and presentations. First, we have the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments. First item, the Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. Good evening, Beverly. How are you?
I think this board is pretty aware of the fact that we've been working for a few years now to try to get this plan approved through FEMA. And I did send to the board a copy of the plan along with a summary. And every community is required to have a hazard mitigation plan in place under the Federal Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000. And this requirement is in place to ensure that communities are looking at taking measures that can mitigate disaster damage in advance of an natural disaster actually occurring. So we have been working with our local communities since 2011 in developing this plan. The plan has to be updated every 5 years, and we had put together a planning team that was comprised of municipal staff, including the emergency managers, public safety officials, the town planners, engineering and public works staff. And we also had a very extensive public participation process. We got input from the business community, neighborhood organizations, nonprofits, local officials, residents, and pretty much anyone who was interested. There was a public meeting held in each community in the region, and then we had 2 public meetings on the draft plan to receive input on that. The plan really looks
Beverly, can I have you pull your mic down just a little bit pointed?
Sure.
towards
The
Thank
plan
you.
really assesses each community's vulnerability to natural hazards, and it's really all kinds of natural hazards, including flooding, winter storms, earthquakes, tornadoes, fire, and flooding. And we looked at the severity and the extent of past occurrences in the community and identified areas where there were certain risks, particularly for flooding. We then mapped all of the critical infrastructure in our region to determine which critical infrastructure was sort of in the path of flooding and when there would need to be mitigation in place, and all of that information was mapped. There are a number of measures that are outlined in the plan that communities can take to reduce the long-term risk from natural hazards, and for the first time we were required to assess the impacts of climate change on issues like flooding as well. The plan was required to demonstrate that communities had made progress since the last hazard mitigation plan was implemented in 2006, and we're happy to report that Chelmsford and all of our communities were able to demonstrate that through other projects that have been implemented since that time. And then we had to develop an action plan that was specific to each community. And that plan was developed with input from municipal officials and town staff. There were a number of meetings with boards and policymakers in the planning team, and we really sort of prioritized the measures based on cost, the availability of funding, whether the measures are politically feasible, consistency with the local plans that you already have in place, and the time that's required for implementation. For Chelmsford, probably the most important thing to note is that you are fortunate to have a FEMA grant in place right now, but you cannot access that funding until this plan is approved. So among the measures that are in the plan is the funding for the erosion control at the Williamsburg condos along the Merrimack River, and replacement of the Meadowbrook Road culvert. There are prevention measures, such as updating the response plan for the Freeman Lake and the Hart Pond dams. And there are things that talk about emergency service projects, such as installing emergency vehicle preemption at any new traffic signals or any redesigned traffic signals in town, and approving sort of alternative access to the Williamsburg condos, which we hear are problematic when there is flooding. There's also information in there and projects that speak to property protection. One of the things that all of the communities felt was important is looking at their municipal buildings in terms of the snow loading capacity of the roofs after the winter that we had last year, so that they have a good sense of when it is they need to clear heavy snow from the roofs and whether any improvements need to be made to them. Every community is required to have a public education plan as part of this. And one of the things that we are suggesting is that communities make information available. It can be either through your website or through creation of a leaflet to increase public awareness on the dangers of extreme temperatures and how residents can prevent any adverse effects from that. Once the plan is adopted, we will meet with the communities on an annual basis to sort of track their progress and implementation, so that when the next update has to be done, we'll be assured that there'll be progress to report. And should a disaster occur, there is a process for amending the plan to sort of revise the mitigation measures or to include additional mitigation plans that the town might seek funding for. So what I'm asking this evening is that this board vote to adopt the plan.
All right, absolutely. Thank you, Beverly. I know this has been a long time coming, and Paul, to the town staff who provided a lot of the critical data that was needed to put the plan together from Chelmsford. This was really a regional effort, so thank you all around. Any questions?
Yeah, how much money is there potentially in this for the Williamsburg project?
It's about $2 million that you have now in approved grants.
Oh, wow.
In an approved grant. And there's also an open grant cycle right now where communities can apply for additional funding. And the way the process works is that every time there is a disaster, the state receives some funding through FEMA for mitigation based on the amount of damage that occurred from that disaster.
Mm-hmm.
And those funds can be spent on all kinds of mitigation projects. So if the money comes from a bad winter storm, it doesn't mean it has to just be spent on mitigation for a winter storm. It can be spent on mitigation for any natural disaster.
Okay. Do we have to match funding in any way?
There's a
or-
25% match required.
Okay, and does the town do that match, or is the condo association do that match?
In this
I'll let
instance,
Paul
the
speak to that.
association.
Association's
The
doing it.
association is doing it?
Right.
Oh, good, okay.
Billy, I'd like to thank you personally very much for all the hard work you did there. And also, I'd like to thank Jimmy Lane, who was a member of the board at that time and did a considerable amount of this work with you. So, I mean, without you, the people at Williamsburg wouldn't have had much, wouldn't have had as much of a shot at getting it. And I know how much they appreciate it. I know how much they need it and how long they've been waiting, but they've been patient, and I know that we'll get it shortly. But thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
Other questions from members of the board?
Let me read the resolution as the motion.
Do you need it read, Beverly?
I don't think it has to be read.
It
Just-
does read? Okay, yeah.
I think
I'll use-
the motion could just be that the board adopts the plan with the conditions outlined in the adoption certificate.
Okay, so does that mean I don't have to read it?
You don't have to read it.
Oh, okay.
Good guy.
Okay, I move that we approve the certificate of adoption for a resolution accepting the hazard mitigation plan for the Northern Middlesex Regional 2015 update. Is that good?
That's good. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? It's unanimous. Thank you very much, Beverly.
Thank you.
And now we will we'll move on to the. Is Jay going to be speaking on behalf of this? Beverly, thank you. So the next item on the agenda, also for the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, is the Regional Emergency Communications Center plan. Jay Donovan, also from NIMCOG. And I don't know, Beverly, if we said your full name. This is Beverly Woods, the Executive Director of the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments.
And who's the third?
Jay Donovan, the Assistant Director. And if you could introduce yourself.
Yes, Tom Kennedy. I'm here as the consultant for NIMCOG.
Thank you very much. So if I could just maybe quickly preface this plan as well. This has been a long time coming. We've had multiple consultants. And again, on behalf of the Town of Chelmsford staff, Paul, police, and fire, for getting timely information to the consultants to help make this process run smoothly, for being generally supportive of the idea of going through the planning process to see how this could affect the town of Chelmsford. Just certainly appreciate your efforts just to bring us to this point so we can have the information we're going to see this evening. It's much appreciated. Beverly?
And Paul, you're going to change my slides, I assume?
Yes.
Great. As the chairman mentioned, we've been working on this project.
And Beverly, I'm sorry, but if you could, although you could bring the mics a little closer, you have to be like 6 to 8 inches away to hear, unfortunately.
How's that better?
Oh,
That's
much
fantastic.
better.
We've been working on this project with our 9 communities for the past 6 years. So I'm going to start by giving you an overview of the project history, and it's just a few slides. I'll try to go through it rather quickly, and then talk about the consolidation option that we have on the table right now. So in 2009, at the request of the city and town managers and administrators, we undertook the task of completing a feasibility study that looked at consolidating 911 dispatch services in our 9 communities, which include Billerica, Chelmsford, Dracut, Dunstable, Lowell, Pepperell, Tewksbury, Tingsboro, and Westford. We applied for a grant from the State 911 Department, which was awarded, and we established a 911 work group, which was comprised of the police and fire chiefs, principally in our communities, and they have been very involved in this process for the entire time. The feasibility study concluded that consolidating 911 dispatch services would improve the quality of service for residents and would result in significant cost savings. And I will preface this entire conversation by saying our objective from the very beginning was to improve service for residents, and if we could happen to save some money along the way, that was all the better. But
Beverly, if I could, I think it was very clear from the very early meetings, not to interrupt, but all these selectmen and planning board members gave very early input saying that service is most important when it comes to public safety. It wasn't about the money, but that would be great. So it was very much a team effort and input from all the selectmen as well. So,
when we were through the feasibility study process, there were still a number of questions that were unanswered regarding personnel, budgeting, where would we locate the facility, and how would it be governed. We basically presented the feasibility study results to the chief elected officials in all 9 communities, and 7 of those boards voted to go forward into an implementation planning phase of the project. So in 2013, we applied for and received a development grant from the State 911 Department to prepare an implementation plan. The plan allowed us to look at the siting for the facility. There were 9 different sites that were investigated. We started to have conversations about governance, and a draft intermunicipal agreement was developed talking about how the center, if it were created, might be developed. We refined some of the cost figures and the budget information, and also looked in greater depth at the staffing requirements for such a facility. In the end, the implementation plan recommended that the 7 communities consolidate their 911 dispatch services, and each of the communities involved elected to continue on with the study process. So in 2014, we received a professional services grant from the State 911 Department to look at some other issues in greater detail, the impact of next generation 911, and I'll discuss later exactly what that is, and how those requirements would affect our local communities. The impact of sending all wireless calls to each community, which is a goal of the state right now. Right now, if you dial 911 on your cell phone, your call goes to the Essex Regional Emergency Communication Center, and they forward a call to the communities. If it's a large event like a major accident, Essex may get 20 calls, but only one of those calls gets forwarded to the local community. So if the local communities were to start to handle those calls, it would greatly increase their workload. We worked on identifying a preferred site for the Regional Emergency Communications Center, And we investigated options for our smaller communities, our very small communities like Pepperell and Dunstable and Tingsboro expressed an interest in consolidating with like-size small communities. So we sort of took that on as a task as well. And then we refined the financial information again. We did additional work on the intermunicipal agreement and we revised the staffing plan. And that has led us to what we think is the most likely consolidation option, which would be the communities of Chelmsford, Dracut, and Tewksbury. We are now doing an implementation plan update, and we have updated all of the data that was in the previous implementation plan. We got all of the call volumes from the communities, and you'll see that Chelmsford has the highest call volume in 2014 with about 6,293 calls, and that's broken out there in terms of wireless and wireline calls. And one of the things to note here is when we historically look at the call volume data, we're seeing a great increase in the wireless calls, which are the cell phone calls, and a decrease in the wireline calls, which are those calls that are made from a landline. We then started to look at the amount of personnel that's on duty right now in the three communities that we're looking at possibly consolidating. Right now, there are 6 dispatchers on duty during the day shift, 6 in the afternoon shift, and 5 on the overnight shift. And then we looked at the budgets for each community in terms of what they're spending now to operate their dispatch services, and found that collectively our communities are spending about $2 million a year to operate the centers that they have in place right now. So then a lot of work has been done over the past year to determine what the staffing should look like for a consolidated facility. So we are suggesting that there be 1 executive director, 1 administrative assistant, 21 dispatchers, and 4.5 working supervisors who will also be manning a console. So that makes the staffing at the center 27.5 employees. Right now there are 22 dispatchers out in the field in total. So we're really adding 3.5 more dispatchers to the regional center that are currently located out in the communities right now. In terms of how the shifts would break out, we envision 6 people on the day shift. It would be 5 dispatchers and a supervisor, 6 people on the evening shift, which would be 5 dispatchers and 1 supervisor, and 5 on the overnight shift, so there'd be 4 dispatchers and 1 supervisor. I will add, unlike the current dispatch environment that people are in now, this center would be state-of-the-art technology. And because in most of our communities, if you're a dispatcher once, you're always a dispatcher, and there's really no career path, this does provide a career path for dispatchers. We assumed when we developed some of the cost figures that we would pay everybody the highest salary that's now being earned by a dispatcher, which happens to be in Chelmsford and is $49,000 a year. And we also assumed that a supervisor would make $62,000 and that the executive director would be making $82,000. So it does provide a path for advancement for people who are currently dispatchers. In terms of the annual cost of operating a regional center, it would be about $2.1 million, but the state provides an incentive grant to regional centers as your reward for regionalizing. And in this case, the incentive grant would be about $393,000, which would reduce the total budget to about $1.7 million. And this past Friday, I was at a meeting that the governor's office and Department of Revenue had with the regional planning agency directors. And we were told that regionalizing 911 dispatch is a great high priority for this administration, and that over the next 2 months, there's a committee that will meet to create even deeper incentives for regionalizing to try to promote that from happening. I can't tell you what they are. I can just tell you that there will be more. So then we looked at how the costs for operating the center would be distributed among the 3 communities. And we used a formula that is comprised of the call volume and the population, which is actually how the state 911 department now distributes their grant funds to communities. And as you can see in the last column, those are the participation ratios, the percentage that each community would pay. And it's very similar across communities, with Chelmsford paying about 37%. They are the highest, and Drake being the lowest at about 30%. So in terms of cost savings, we calculated the cost savings for personnel and also for equipment. If regionalization were to happen, the state would fund all of the equipment for the center. It would no longer be a cost that the town would have to bear. And in the case of Chelmsford, you have some pretty serious needs for radio equipment and other things in your current dispatch center, and I'll let the chief talk to that later because that's kind of outside my area of expertise. But we believe that Chelmsford would save at least $111,000 per year, and my understanding is that there have been conversations between the town managers over the last few days about these budget numbers and that they will probably be adjusted a little bit. It's expected that the Chelmsford number will actually go up a little and the Tewksbury number will go down a little. So they will be refined, but at a minimum, you would save at least $111,000 a year. And I will add to that the experience with regional dispatch centers, and I'll use the Neshoba Valley Regional Emergency Communication Center at Devens, which was formed a year or so ago, consisting of 4 communities. There are now other communities looking to join. And we assume that that will probably be the case here, which would further reduce the costs to the communities that are the sort of the original organizers of the center. In terms of the costs that would be covered by the state through their development grant, they would cover all of the architectural costs, the engineering, design, all of the building construction costs, including the materials, the labor, any financing costs that would be incurred. They basically would pay for all of the equipment for the radio systems, security, the consoles, the computer-aided dispatch system, the records management system, the fire alarm receiving and alerting, the furnishings, and even for radio equipment that's needed out in the communities for the communities to communicate with the regional center. The executive director's salary is also paid for by the state. They'll pay for the executive director's salary 1 year before the center starts up so that he can be involved with the design and the building of the center and with the staffing. And they also will pay for it during the first year of operations. As I mentioned before, we're seeing this great increase in the volume of wireless calls, and that they are now answered by the Essex RECC and transferred to the communities. Our expectation is once the center opens, that the wireless calls for these communities would now come directly to the center, and the state 911 department funds the answering of those calls. So we expect to see additional revenues come to the center as a result of them being able to take the wireless calls, which would deepen the savings that you have seen before. We were able to get some data from the state 911 department in terms of what that might look like. And instead of receiving a $300,000 incentive grant, it may be more along the $500,000 to $800,000 incentive grant, so it would greatly reduce the costs to the communities. Those savings would get divided among the communities using the participation ratio that was discussed previously. We spent a lot of time looking at the governance of the Regional Emergency Communications Center, and in the midst of our study, there was new legislation that was passed. It's Chapter 500 of the Acts of 2014. That provides some guidance on what the state requires in terms of governance. There is a district agreement that each community that participates will need to sign, and the governance is set up so that there's a board of directors, which would be comprised of a town manager from each town, and the voting on that board of directors would be one community, one vote. Each community has equal say in how the center operates. The legislation requires that there be a finance advisory subcommittee, which is comprised of each community's chief financial officer and chief administrative officer. And there would also be an operations committee that would be comprised of the police and fire chiefs, and they would set up the standard operating procedures and the protocol for operating the center. And then a technology subcommittee comprised of the sort of technology experts that work in each dispatch center to manage and maintain all of the technology and the equipment that's involved in the center. We looked at a number of sites. As I said, initially we started with 9 sites. By the time we've gotten to the implementation plan phase, we have 3 sites that appear to be viable. 2 of those are state-owned. One is the Tewksbury State Hospital, and the other is UMass Lowell West Campus. And then most recently, the DPW land in Tewksbury became available. The town of Tewksbury has offered that up as a site. We've looked at that, and it meets all of the nationally accepted criteria and standards for regional communication centers. And the real plus here is that it is municipally owned, so it wouldn't require special legislation to secure the site, and it wouldn't require dealing with DCAM, and the town, I'm sure, has had some experience. That's not necessarily an easy process. So that we see that as the most advantageous site for this, and the town of Tewksbury is willing to make that available at no cost. There are a number of new requirements that are coming down for local dispatch centers. Next Generation 911 is now under development, and the State 911 Department intends to have that operating by June of next year. And this is an FCC requirement. It's not optional. It's an IP-based system, and communities will now have to have the ability not only to handle 911 calls, but also to receive text messages, images, videos, and other forms of data from the public. The state has started looking at all of the local centers to determine what needs to be done to allow them to accommodate the Next Generation 911 requirements. And as I had mentioned earlier, they're also looking to eventually send the wireless calls directly to the community, significantly increasing the call volumes that are now handled. I will point out that all of the cost estimates that you saw are very conservative. One of the things we did not want to do is sort of oversell this service. We wanted to give you a very realistic picture, which is why we used the highest salaries that we could and the highest costs. But in light of that, we really feel that this is something that would benefit the communities. It would enhance the quality of service that you now have for your residents. You would have a modern, state-of-the-art facility that would be entirely paid for by the Commonwealth. It creates a better work environment for your dispatchers. It gives them a career path. It also increases the ability to handle a major event or a disaster that might occur in your community. If there's a large fire, a bad accident, an explosion, instead of having 2 dispatchers now you have 6 dispatchers at your disposal to handle those calls. So we really think that communities will benefit from this. It's very unlikely that there'd be a large event that would affect multiple communities at a time, and it certainly would give you much more manpower than you have currently. The future replacement of equipment would be funded by the 911 department. So going forward, when it's time to replace that technology, which has to be updated pretty regularly, that cost would be borne by the state. And it also enhances information sharing between the communities. You have all of your dispatchers in one place. We all know that criminals don't obey geographic boundaries. So it allows them to have all of the latest information at their fingertips in terms of crime patterns and activity. As I mentioned before, it relieves the communities of having to deal with additional state and federal requirements that we know are coming down. And I had already talked about the fact that dispatchers would probably receive a higher salary and that they have a career path ahead of them, which they don't have now. In terms of implementation and next steps, the next thing that would need to be done is the district agreement would need to be adopted by each community in order to apply for design funding. And for the funds for the executive director's salary, the agreement needs to be in place. Then you would hire your director and begin the design process. And The chiefs would work on establishing the standard operating procedures and salaries. Then you would construct the center. And as you're nearing completion of construction, begin to hire and train your personnel, and then cut over to the center, which we assume all of this would take about a 2 to 3 year time frame to complete. Thank you.
Beverly, thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Would anyone else like to speak on behalf of the three of you who are presenting tonight? Or are they just here for the questions? Yes. Okay, very good, very good. I don't know if members of the board would like to start.
I'd rather hear the crowd first.
Okay. Did you want to hear? Well, before we ask questions, if you like, I can maybe have the chiefs come up and the dispatchers. I don't know if either of the chiefs would like to just come up and briefly speak of this. We will start first with our police chief. I know you came in as chief after this process had already been started, but we certainly appreciate you allowing the process to continue up to this point. We'd love to hear what you have to say.
Thank you.
Evening.
Yes, I certainly did. Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Manager. With regards to the regional dispatch, this is a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's a big deal. And I respect everybody's passion and concern. We went through this about 20 years ago when the proposal was made to consolidate the fire dispatches with the police dispatches. Obviously, the employees most affected by this are the dispatches. But this is not about the dispatchers. It's not about their job performance. They do an excellent job. They have a tough job. I have nothing but respect for all of them. I consider them highly dedicated and professional group. But in my opinion, this is about moving forward and looking at the big picture and deciding on what is best for our town and our region. Change is always difficult, especially for those on the front line and have to pave the way. Like you said, Mr. Chairman, I've been involved with the NIMCOG communication discussions since 2013 when I became deputy chief. And prior to that, Chief Murphy was involved with it since 2009. When I became heavily involved in 2013, I was against it. I was a skeptic. I said it's not for Chelmsford. But I also was committed to keeping an open mind and to gather all the facts because I knew it was just a matter of time where I'd be standing at this podium in front of this body. My major concern was, is, and always will be that adequate resources are available for Chelmsford from this center, and that efficient and effective delivery of services will go to Chelmsford from this center.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to meeting with the NIBCOG committee, the consultants, and the other town officials from Tewksbury and Dracut, and for a large part Lowell, I also made an effort to tour the Essex Communication Center. I toured the Neshoba Valley Communication Center. While there, I spoke to dispatchers, I spoke to supervisors, I spoke to the executive directors. I also spoke with the police officials that are part of those centers. I spoke to police chiefs, and I spoke to other officials on those departments. And they all relayed to me the same basic core of results of going to the center. I have some of those listed here. Beverly did mention some of them already. More resources available to assist with the critical incident. More controlled environment. In a center, the dispatchers will not be dealing with the public at the window. They will not be dealing with police officers coming in and out of the room. They'll be dealing with dispatching. There'll be a dispatcher supervisor on duty at all times. Myself and Chief Sheehan from Tewksbury made this a priority when we were crafting the framework on this.
Mm-hmm.
As it stands right now, Chelmsford does not have a dispatcher supervisor. The OIC acts as the supervisor for the dispatch. And oftentimes, when we're down to one supervisor, maybe on a Sunday morning, and that supervisor is on the road, there's two dispatchers in the building. And no disrespect to them, but there's two dispatchers in there, there's no supervisor. So I see that as a benefit. The dispatcher training will be more frequent in the center. At least that's been my observations with the people I've talked to. The dispatch equipment will be state-of-the-art and more regularly replaced and upgraded. And as Beverly stated, the dispatchers will have more opportunity for career advancement. As it stands right now, in Chelmsford, we have, again, there's no supervisor level. The dispatchers are the dispatchers, and other than some seniority perks, which allow them to pick what shifts they want, there's no upward available movement. Another benefit is better communication between participating communities, because we all have to share the same system. And I think common sense would say what that does for the community sharing the system. So that's some of the benefits, the feedback I got from everybody I spoke to. Some concerns that have been brought to my attention, and it's the same ones that come up over and over again, is that we somehow lose control. We lose control because the dispatch center is going to be someplace else. In my opinion, that would not be the case. In addition to having 2 oversight boards, one at the executive level and one at the operational level, all the towns have real-time supervision on duty at all times. So the example I just gave you about the sergeant out on the road on a Sunday morning, he's not in the center. So if a call comes in, and very rarely this happens, but if a call comes in and for some reason a dispatcher gives out incorrect information, it's up to the supervisor on duty to override what the dispatcher just said and dispatch the officer to the scene. That's how we do it now. That's how we would do it in a wreck. There's always at least one supervisor on the job in Chelmsford, and in most cases 2. We have a shift commander and a patrol supervisor. So this loss of control, I get it. I understand the angle of it. I don't see it. And it's never been my experience that it's happened here. Again, the bosses are on the job. They're out on the road, and it's their job to make sure the calls are handled correctly, not the dispatchers. Oftentimes, the dispatchers have incorrect information to go with. They only have part of the information. That's why we have supervisors. As it's been said already here, I've never been about the savings. I've never been about the money. I've never been about what the spreadsheets look like in the end for Chelmsford. For me as police chief, it's always been about public safety. It's always been about adequate resources and delivery of services. That being said, one thing the board needs to know, and it's been brought up, our radio infrastructure as it stands right now in Chelmsford is at end of life. We've been advised by Motorola, they do not make replacement parts for our system as it sits right now. That doesn't mean it can't be fixed, but it means it's near the end. It was put in 2004, and it's basically a giant computer. It's not a radio, it's a giant computer, and it's at end of life. I have met with Motorola. I have been given projections in the area of $800,000 to $1 million for that center as it stands at our police facility right now to be upgraded. So again, that's not what it's all about for me, but it's certainly something that needs to be considered moving forward. Whatever happens moving forward, that is an issue that one way or another has to be rectified. So with that, I will take any questions you have.
Chief, thank you very much. We certainly appreciate your comments. I hope you'll stick around for questions. I don't know if members of the board would like to ask questions specifically, if we'd like to hear from the fire chief first, and then if you'll all stick around for questions, maybe after we have the dispatcher speech, they may have some questions as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Chief Ryan, good evening. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you. First of all, my condolences to Deb Devery. I don't know if she's still in the room, but I'm sorry to hear about the loss of her husband. So my condolences to her. And certainly I have not been involved with this situation, this process. I've only been chief for a couple of months.
Right.
So I've had a lot of homework to do, so I will tell you what I know.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
First of all, I echo Chief Spinney's sentiments. We are fortunate in this town to have a dedicated and professional group of dispatchers. Our dispatchers are the first contact for any emergency situation. Often under trying circumstances, they must process emergency calls under trying circumstances while remaining calm and trying to accurately gather information to relay to the responding police and firefighters. They are the most important link to the public safety chain, and quite frankly, we couldn't do our jobs without them. So thank you very much. Due to the advances in technology, regional dispatch services are more common in parts of the country. Currently in Massachusetts, we have 262 public safety call centers spread across the state. That is one dispatch center for every 24,000 residents. Maryland, a state with a population and land comparable to Massachusetts, has 24 call centers, or one for every 233,000 residents. Within Massachusetts, the Barnstable Sheriff's Office has dispatches for 10 fire departments. Berkshire County Sheriff's Office serves 24 communities. So over the past couple of weeks, I've been trying to do a lot of homework here. I've been in contact with Barnstable County, Essex, and the Neshoba District, and I've asked them to address some of the concerns. Starting off with so many issues against regionalization, I asked them about the loss of control issue. I know Beverly's touched on this. If this is approved, it's going to be governed by an administrative board of your town and city managers. It's going to have an operations board with the police chiefs and other public safety officials, and it's going to have a finance board. And this structure has worked well in the Neshoba Valley. The loss of local knowledge. During my visit yesterday to Essex, I asked the dispatchers there about this issue, and do you overcome it? And they said generally, if somebody doesn't know the area, there's somebody within the immediate area that will know. Like if it's Hot Pond, or if it's Freeman Lake, they will know. Somebody in that dispatch area will usually know the area. If not, improved mapping capabilities with GIS systems have helped to overcome this issue. Loss of funding, that was a question, that was a concern I had and others. From what I've been told, the wireless surcharge that was signed into law by Governor Patrick in 2008 applies a formula that will distribute the funding based on the number of municipalities that will serve in a dispatch center. Basically, it's an incentive to join the regional dispatch center. Interoperability of technology, this is usually an issue that fire departments face.
Yeah.
We have an aging fire alarm system here, and it's been recommended to me that if we move forward, that we're going to have to reinvest some of our savings to upgrading our fire alarm system. But then again, I would probably come to you in a few years, whether you pass this or not, to address this issue.
Right.
Impact bargaining. Currently, our dispatchers fill our vacant shifts, vacation days, personal days, sick days, and we do not have that ability right now to absorb that responsibility. So that's something we would have to think about.
Right.
Mishandled calls. I know Beverly's touched on the whole wireless calls, and we're going more from the phone lines, landlines, to wireless calls. At Essex, they handle right now 34 cities and towns in Essex County, 32 in Middlesex County, and 3 in Suffolk. They're overloaded. So whether we do this or not, a lot of those calls are probably going to be coming our way at some point. And there's a monetary benefit, I think that Beverly touched on that we will get some of the money to handle those calls. Some of the benefits that have been relayed to me, I know I'm probably repeating some of the things that were talked about tonight. By sharing the same computer-aided dispatch systems and record management systems, this will allow for the enhanced sharing of information. Cost efficiencies are realized by joint purchasing power. Having input from multiple communities in developing policies and procedures, this will help establish uniform training and also reduce our risk to liability. That was brought up by a few chiefs. Opportunities to secure grants are improved for a regional dispatch center. And what I found out from the Neshoba dispatch center when I was down there, communication has improved for mutual aid responses. If you have a common database, you can generally tap into that, find out hiring locations, building locations, and in floor plans for different communities. That's something I would like. Beverly did touch on funding for updated dispatch equipment. I know next generation 911 is a concern to a lot of departments.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, the text to 911, there are 4 major phone carriers that are currently providing this service. Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, and T-Mobile have all committed to providing the service. Currently, only the state of Vermont is ready to receive text to 911.
Wow.
So a lot of dispatch centers are going to have to adapt. Okay. And also the dispatch centers that will adapt to this, not only do you have to have the policies and procedures, the ability to receive the 911 messages, you need to have the policies and procedures to accurately store pictures, videos, text messages. That's a liability concern. And to conclude, according to the 2008 Pioneer Institute report on regionalization, titled Case Studies of Success and Failure in Massachusetts, the obstacles to past regionalization efforts have included not having a plan in place to address the loss of local control. I think with the new, with the governing board, which is established, whether it's the administrative board, the operations committee, the finance committee, I think we can handle that part of it. The second obstacle has generally been the failure to establish financial parity among the participating communities. Beverly Woods has discussed how the operating budget will be shared. The report does conclude that the cost benefits from regionalization are clear. Substantial savings can be realized by sharing personnel, operating costs, while continuously upgrading expensive technology. I'll be happy to answer whatever questions you may have.
It's fantastic. No, greatly appreciate those
Thank you.
comments. I think maybe we should hear from the dispatchers and then ask questions if that's okay on their side of the story. We good? Is there someone who would like to speak on behalf of the dispatchers, either with questions or comments? Sure, please come up to the podium, and if you could just...
I have a small packet for each one of you.
Okay.
It's actually going to be three of us because we shot and each person has a little bit to say. So
Okay.
pretty much the chief and the fire chief and the police chief touched on a lot of things I had to say, but basically regional dispatch is good for smaller towns with less population than Chelmsford has.
Oh, I'm sorry. Could you please introduce yourself for the record?
I'm sorry.
And for people at
My
home?
name is David DeFreitas. I'm a dispatcher in the town of Chelmsford for the last 23 years. And I've been a resident for like approximately 25 years. I'm a little nervous. I don't do
That's
this
fine.
often. Again, touching
Some
on what
water if you'd like. Just let us know.
touching on what the police and fire chief said, I know what they're coming from. But again, it isn't about the money. Saving seconds saves lives. Regional dispatch, in our experience, isn't working. It's good for communities with 6,000 to 10,000 people. If 3 or 4 of those communities, now you're up to 40,000 people. It works for them. They only have 1 or 2 cruisers on the road per night. 2 cruisers in a day, and one of them is a supervisor. Chelmsford, we keep 5, 6 cruisers on the line, 5 firehouses, 10 to 15 firefighters on duty. Seconds save lives. We get a call, we act on it. There's 2 of us on duty. One of us takes the call, the other one knows what's going on, he starts rolling people. Again, I just don't agree. I mean, if it's not about the money, what's it about? We're saving people. And I think it works in an eastern part of the state or western part of the state, I mean. Small communities, it might work. Essex is having trouble. I'm not going to get into that. These guys say the supervisors are there. Well, they're still having trouble.
I appreciate that.
All right.
I don't know if, yeah, I'll let your other two, the other 2 dispatchers speak, and then we'll have some questions. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And again, if you could please state your name and address for the record.
Name and address?
Yes.
Okay. Lisa Demers.
That's common practice, by the way,
That's
for the
okay,
record.
yeah. Happens in Lowell, too. 44 Lamb Street, Lowell, Mass. Public Safety Dispatch for the town of Chelmsford. How many of you have ever been in our dispatch center and for a substantial amount of time and witnessed a substantial amount of calls and how the day and the shift runs? Okay, I'll give you a couple examples of some calls just recently without giving out a whole lot of details, but it surmises them. Last week, fire in town, call comes in on the business line. All right, not the 911 lines, which is all we hear about, is these 911 lines, be it wireless or wireline. We don't have to look a thing up, for the most part. We have a few obscure streets here and there, but you want to know something? We can hit engine 4, engine 1, engine 3, respond 2, without having to look a thing up. That's time savings. That's not going to happen. Okay? I listened to the chiefs talk about they visited these centers, they talked with these people. I talked with supervisors, South Shore, talked with dispatchers, South Shore, talked with dispatchers in the Neshoba, talked with dispatchers in South Worcester. Okay, and just talking to different, nobody runs this the same way. All right? Duxbury, Plimpton, they're a wreck. They're dispatching the exact way we do it now. Why would we change for $111,000? Okay, it's not about the money, so what's it about, like my previous coworker said? Okay, we had that engine company out there, or those engine companies out there, that rapid dispatch, that rapid response resulted in a decent save. Maybe some of the gentlemen that are here, if they choose to speak, or anybody else chooses to speak on it that may have know a little more about it, they can, and talk about that. The other night, car breaks, Middlesex Street. Dispatching, I'm on the phone. My partner starts dispatching as I am giving the information back to the caller. Okay? We have that echoing, all right, where you want to verify the information with the caller, make sure that they're understanding what they're telling you, and you're understanding what they're telling you. Caller states, my car's being broken into right now, they're running away, they're wearing a gray hoodie, blah, blah, blah. It ends up in an apprehension because we don't have to look anything up. We know we're sending car 2 and car 3 to that. Okay? That's on Middlesex Street. They're running up Highland. Okay, they're running towards Princeton, so you got 2 cars, they know where they're going, no time wasted in turning around and dispatching that. Some people might say, well, that's petty, that's, that's something from somebody's car or whatever. That can easily be transcended into any other call. Okay, a life or death situation, a medical, somebody not breathing, a straight up assault and battery that you're witnessing, and 99% of the time, we're not looking a thing up because we know what's going. Seconds save lives. You're not going to get that. Okay, they're talking about, oh, you'll be able to share some time, share resources, share personnel if an emergency's happen. Okay, great. Does an emergency happen in Tewksbury? Does everything sit on the back burner for Chelmsford? Or your second person maybe for Chelmsford, okay, where they say we transcended 2 from Chelmsford, 2 for Tewksbury, 2 for Drake at day shift, in those terms, and allotting those people. Your second person per se for Chelmsford could be tied up in Tewksbury with their, so there's nobody sending that information. We're sitting 3.5 feet away from each other right now, providing you a service that you're not going to get through regional. I'm sorry, nobody's going to convince me of that. I mean, there's parts of that regional, I look at it, hey, who wouldn't want a job advancement? Who wouldn't want the opportunity to make more money? But it's not about me. Okay, it's not about me. It's about servicing people. That's why we all took this job. We've got well over 100 years of combined experience in your dispatch center right now with the amount of people that have been there for the years that they've been there. You're probably not going to get that at the regional level without multiple amounts of people. The number of years that we've put in, for the 9 dispatchers that have put in at that center, it tops 100. That's a lot. That's a lot of knowledge. That's a lot of power at your fingertips on that microphone key to put out there and to get the services to the residents in this town. I don't live in this town. Okay, my family ran businesses in this town. A lot of my family lived in this town. I know it pretty well. I live in Lowell. I spoke in Lowell. I'm a taxpayer there. Okay, I didn't think it was a fit for them. Okay, we all know this plan's changed. As much as I know, Lowell has not absolutely said no, but there has to be something that's making somebody think that they're not coming on board with this. All right? Listen to the fire chief talk about the communities that are involved. There's 124 communities involved in some sort of agreement or regional agreement for dispatching. All right? That leaves 2/3 of the communities in the state of Massachusetts not involved. Of which, when you look in your packets that Christian handed out, there's going to be a map, and we exist in that big area of that open white. This area, this is that area population. Okay, does not equate to the population in here. Okay, works out here, or is working out here for them. Some of these communities have never had police departments. Okay, some of these communities have police departments that close their door. They're not 24/7. All right, we're talking about replacing people at the station somehow, some way to deal with the foot traffic that comes in. Okay, because medicals, emergencies, people looking for directions. It's a service that the town has become accustomed to, and you're going to wipe that right out. All right, or you're going to pay a substantial amount of money to put it in there. Okay. They say they've included some of it, maybe, tried to include it. I have a hard time believing that they would have included it here, and Norwell would have ran, I believe it was Norwell on the South Shore. If I'm misspeaking, sorry Norwell, sorry everybody in the room. But there's one of the 4 communities involved there, their police department had to absorb $200,000. So where was their cost savings? Gone. Another community, $190,000 some odd dollars. Again, you say it's not about the money, but if that money existed, the radio problem wouldn't be a problem. Our radio system, we've known for 2 years or more that's on its last leg. That parts haven't been available. Things are what they are. Things come with a price tag. Okay? Eventually down the road, 2 years down the road, you're going to be paying for you're going to absorb the cost of that director of that center. You're going to absorb any salary increases that are negotiated through contracts. So your cost is going to go up. Your savings is going to go down. And I don't think you can equate that with the service that you get right now with people sitting 3.5 feet away from each other, providing you that service, able to bounce off each other. You want to know something? I'm confident we could handle the wireless 911 calls. Send them our way. Tell the SETB to send them our way. With the experience we have in that room, we got it. We'll cover the radios.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate those comments. Thank you. I think we have one more individual.
Rich
Good evening, sir.
Mr. Chairman. My name is Richard Demers, and I'm a dispatcher here in the town of Chelmsford. I have been for 23 years. Good evening, Mr. Cohen. Good evening, Mrs. Mel. I know she never gets any recognition sitting up here.
We thank her after the meetings. He's the best.
Mr. Chairman, before I start, I'd like to just let you know that we have dispatchers in the room from not only Chelmsford, but from Lowell and Tewksbury. And at this time, I'd like to just ask the dispatchers that are against regional dispatch, if you wouldn't mind, to raise their hands, if that would be okay.
Sure. All right.
Now, I'd like to ask the rest of the public that's in the room that's here about the regionalization, if they're against regionalization, if they'd raise their hands.
Are you going to ask anyone if they're in favor of it?
Just to be fair. I thought I'd do it. Anybody here in favor of it?
It's hard to, I wasn't counting.
So we got a
few. That's typically how it turns out in
That's
things
fine.
like
I don't
this.
have a problem with that.
People don't.
I'm just glad we don't have a dangerous dog hearing tonight, because usually that's when we're up here.
Eric's here. We're okay.
Estimated cost savings per NIMCOG, $111,160. Known facts. It's all over everywhere. The loss of revenues. We issue fire permits. Fire permits are issued to work on fire alarm systems. Last year, we gave out 450 fire permits. It's about $4,500 in revenue. 20 fire sprinkler permits, about $2,000 in revenue. The town of Chelmsford has 426 master boxes. We charge $150. We regionalize, we're going to lose that unless we run 20 miles of cable from the dispatch center to the dispatch center. Radio boxes are not viable. It's too far away. So we could lose in excess of $6,500 for the boxes, $4,500 in revenues on the fire alarm permits, and $2,000 in revenues on sprinkler permits. Because if they go to a private fire alarm, a private monitoring company, all the alarm companies are going to have to do is this 1, 2, 3 fire alarm company. Yep, this is Rich from ABC Fire Alarm. Take us offline. Why do they need to call the fire department? Why do they need to spend the $10 for a fire alarm permit? No need for it. What is the cost to rehire personnel? Whether they have to rehire people in the fire prevention office to handle the fire alarm permits, or clerical in the police station, or bring police officers on board to cover the front desk 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for that medical that could come walking in the door. We had one last week. Lady was pale, cool, and diaphoretic. She was having the big one. Can't just stand there and twiddle your thumbs. You have to do something. They talk about training. All of us receive the same training. We've gone through the same training. Some of us go above and beyond. I'm an EMTB. Lisa's an EMT basic. we're also instructors for the Commonwealth for EMT. We also CPR first aid training. We do a lot of this on our own because we want to. NIMCOG keeps talking about 6,293 911 calls. We're logging into our CAD system 36,000 calls into the CAD system. So they're saying we're getting 30,000 calls on the regular phone line. Then they're talking about that we could get a savings of 500,000 to 750,000 for additional 911 services. They can go to the towns. What are they going to go to the towns for? It's going to go to the rec center. It's like the lottery. We're supposed to get all the money in the cities and towns for the lottery. Where's the money going? General fund. We don't see it.
I disagree with that.
We see some of it.
Well, we get some of it, but we don't get what's been promised to us. What's going to cost taxpayers each year, the percentage, when the percentage goes up? I listen to the board every year at town meeting about Neshoba. I listen to it in Greater Lowell Vogue. I've never heard Neshoba or Greater Lowell Vogue come back and say, this city or town, we're not going to take your money this year. It goes up each and every year. This is what's going to happen here.
With all due respect, that happens with our budget in general.
Absolutely.
No matter what.
I agree. But the bottom line is the safety of the town and the people. We have 33,000 residents in the town of Chelmsford. During the day, we got over 100,000 people. With everybody that comes into this town works and travels through the town. Okay? If there's a mistake making, it's going to be the dispatcher who loses the job. They're not going to fire a Board of Selectmen. They're not going to fire a city council. They're not going to fire a manager. But I'm going to tell you right now, the lawsuit, you better give the legal department some extra money because a lawsuit's going to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Thank you.
Sure. Appreciate those comments. If I could quickly, before we move on, either Paul or whoever may want to address a couple of the questions. I know there are a few questions that we do have answers to because we've been asking some of those questions for a few years now. I don't know, Paul, if you wanted to address a couple of things you heard. It looked like you may.
I think Gary Ryan can speak to the alarm system, but I just want to offer a comment because I'm sort of puzzled as we're sitting here. I understand the unsettledness, and I know Jim Smitty said it earlier about change. Mm-hmm. But I fully expect, and I think it's the expectation of NIMCOG and it's the expectation in Tewksbury and Drake that if this regional center becomes operational, all the experienced people that you see in this room this evening as dispatchers are likely going to be the ones in that regional center, providing the service. I just want to make it clear: this isn't the era mark of custodial services. We're not basically looking to take the people out and then bring in $8 an hour minimum wage people. As Beverly said,
That's your way of trying to convince me to vote for that?
No. I'm trying to make it clear because I think there's a disconnect here. I know that the Tewksbury chiefs.
I think that's the disconnect. What I don't understand.
Right, exactly. That's what I don't understand because I know the Tewksbury chiefs said it in their meeting, and I'm sure our chiefs will both say it, and I'll say it. We're going to advocate for when it comes to the hiring the personnel. We're going to advocate for our people, and we're going to fully expect that they're going to be the ones in there because, as was noted earlier, we're not going to have fewer positions. If anything, we're going to have more positions, and then whoever the executive director is that's running that is going to answer to the public safety chiefs as well as the managers as to why our people aren't being hired. Because, as we noted earlier, there was nothing being said, and I've been at these meetings for years, and I know other chiefs has been. This has not been about criticizing or concerns about the performance of the public safety dispatchers. As you've heard across the board this evening, and I'll say it myself, we're pleased with the work that they do. And in fact, when we recently had the upgrade to going to the 911 medical dispatch, when we had the choice of do we do it ourselves or do we sub that out to Trinity, at the time, myself and Chief Murphy in consultation, we kept it ourselves. So I don't know where this notion is that we're looking to take people and their experience and throw them out the door. In fact, at the end of the day, I expect that our people will be hired, that they'll likely be working the shifts that they want, which is sort of what they have now based on their seniority. Because let me give an example. And if a dispatcher is hired and they have 20 years of experience in Chelmsford as a dispatcher, we're not going to say to that person, "Oh, welcome, you're a new employee. We're going to give you 2 weeks vacation." No. We're going to give them the vacation that they would have for a 20-year employee. That's how it's going to work. And most likely, once they get settled,
Not accepting additional comments at the
once,
moment.
when they get settled, they're going to form their own collective bargaining unit, and then basically they'll be at the table. So I'm just sort of stunned by this notion that we're basically trying to flush out the people that we currently have who are serving us remarkably well, and bring in people who don't have a clue. And I think the fact that we train
You
people.
see this as a merging of
Exactly.
all of the dispatchers.
Exactly, that's what it is. It's putting the two and two into a room of 6, and we do train people. As we said, we train them well because, quite frankly, of the 9 dispatches that we have working in Chelmsford full time, only 2 of them are Chelmsford residents. And the bottom line is, we train people who come in from outside the community, and they know our community, and they know that Hart Pond is Baptist Pond and everything else, and that's what we're going to continue to do. So I'm just sort of, I just want to clear any misconception that this is basically a way of, or that we're going to basically sort of, start fresh, and we're not looking to keep these people. My expectation and my knowledge is that everybody who wants to go is going to be welcomed and brought aboard. And that's what happened in the Neshoba facility and others, to my knowledge. And even if it doesn't, that's what's going to happen here. That Chief Spinney and Chief Ryan and I, as well as I believe the chiefs in the other communities, are basically going to insist that their people be hired. And I welcome Chief Spinney and Chief Ryan to get up and correct me, because I'm not putting words in their mouth and I'm not twisting their arms. But if you feel any differently, please go to that microphone, because that's not the understanding in our conversations.
Right. And if I could, there was 2 other things that maybe we could address that were brought up more as questions. One was what happens with the desk person, and in speaking with the consultants over the years, it was our understanding that the savings in most communities, everyone may set up their desk person a little bit differently. If it's a part-time dispatcher who also greets people, the savings should be significant enough that if someone wants to hire someone,
and I think let Chief
to be
Spinney
here,
speak there, because we've talked
could
about
make
this
that
at the
happen. Yeah, if you
station.
could speak to that, please.
Yeah, that's come up over and over again, is the fact that Chelmsford is far too big a community to have our station be unmanned at any time. That was off the table for me, moment one. I made that clear to the town manager, and he agreed. That was never an option for us. We're too big. Station's too big. Our populace is too big. We're near the highway. Our police station is a safe haven. And we know that. That was never an option. One way or another, that lobby will be manned. My preference is that it be manned with a police officer. That has not been finalized, but whether it's a police officer or some type of public safety clerk, however you want to call it, there'll be a human being on the other side of that glass when you walk into the Chelmsford Police Station.
I appreciate it. And actually, Chief, before you could step down, just one more clarification, because I just want people to know this wasn't something certainly that NIMCOG was just, I just want to say it in favor of right away. It was an idea we worked through for years. Myself personally, being on the Northern Middlesex Council of Government for the past 6 years, we've only asked questions and tried to learn more about this and make it the best for our community, and public safety has been all of our number one concern. So if I sit here and vote for this, I don't want anyone to think that that's not our concern. And something that's been mentioned multiple times, which really hit home, and I think it was discussed tonight, is seconds save lives. And as I understand it, within a few years, it's expected that 50% of all calls, emergency calls, are going to be made on a cell phone. And right now, as it is, all of those calls need to be dispatched and then transferred twice. So 50% of the time when someone's calling, if they're calling from a cell phone, they have to wait 5 or 10 seconds, whatever it takes, to go to Essex, and then be transferred here. 50% of our calls, thousands of calls every year in this center, could reduce that time off of every one of those calls if those wireless calls that people in our community are making right now go directly to our emergency communication center. And if it's true that seconds save lives, would you say that all those second saves would improve public safety in our community?
I'll just say that as it stands right now, a 911 call from a cell phone goes to Essex, and then that call has to be transferred to Chelmsford.
Thank you.
Eventually, where this is all going is the technology will detect where a cell phone is, and that cell phone call will go to the community you're in.
Right.
So whether it be a rec that Chelmsford's part of, or the Chelmsford facility, eventually that's where it's all going to go. Because yes, it's the transferring that's causing the delay.
And I will just add to that every time a call is transferred, there is the danger of dropping a call. So to have the highest quality service, theoretically, you don't want to have to transfer that call.
And actually, one thing, Beverly, that I'd like to mention that was brought up in our discussions on NIMCOG that I don't think was addressed in the presentation is there's something that happens if the power goes out at our facility in Chelmsford and there's a backup generator, and we know something could happen with that, and if it did, and this has happened in other communities, you're in big trouble. People can't make a 911 call. If something happens at the regional dispatch center, what happens?
Well, every regional dispatch center will have a backup. The state 911 department determines where that backup will be located based on the size of the center. So in the case of this center, if this were to happen, it would be the second largest center in the Commonwealth. More than likely, they would choose to have the backup either be Essex, or right now, Lynn and Barnstable have a center that serves 104,000 people, so they're fairly large. They could also accommodate us as a backup, but it will be up to the state 911 department to decide where the best entity is for the backup capacity.
And if there's an emergency, they can just make a quick transfer.
Correct.
So people can continue making 911 calls. I don't believe we have the capability to just do such a quick switch to another regional or emergency communication center today.
Well, there's a
Unless I'm
two-way, no,
mistaken.
there is, no, it works.
Did you-
There's a two-way, it's called the two-way. If we receive a call that should be in Westford, our dispatchers two-way it over to Westford, stay on the line until Westford has it, then, usually discontinue.
Okay. I appreciate
Just
that.
to echo the town manager, what he said, whether or not all the dispatchers decide to go to a center, if we go that way 3, 4, 5 years from now, that's up to them. They have my support 110% if they were to put their name on a list. And I don't foresee a scenario that anybody wanting to go would not go. So, I'll just echo that.
So I think those are the questions, but it's certainly open to questions from members of the board for any of the panelists, chiefs, dispatchers, anyone. So I'm sure there's a few questions. I think
Go
Bob.
ahead, Janet.
Did you want to allow them a chance? I guess I'm just, it sounds like a great opportunity for the dispatchers. It sounds like everyone's going to be hired. They're going to get higher salaries, chance for advancement. So I don't
If I could, hold
understand
on, please. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you finished.
Yeah, I just don't understand why everyone was, or most people
And if
were
I could,
shaking their head back
before
there.
you start, if I could just say, if we do allow people to come back up a second time, please make sure you're not just repeating the same things we've already heard, because there's so many people here tonight. But if you want to keep your comments brief, maybe to 1 or 2 minutes as you're responding to something, a question.
Certainly. In response to you, Mr. Manager, that information came from the Tewksbury meeting last week as to not everybody being hired. Okay, it was clearly stated they will hire the best qualified based on if you meet you have all the training, the equipment, because they want to put the best qualified people in there.
I think what was said is that there is no...
Order.
Sorry, Beverly. Okay, we'll let her finish, and then I'll have you respond, Beverly, if you could. Sorry.
Okay, and it was stated several times, we could probably call it up on YouTube. So, but outside of that, we don't run the same CAD system right now as the other two communities. They run IMC, we don't. Okay, there's a setback. What's not talked about, they talk about figures and you have more dispatches because of the supervisors. What's not talked about is Tewksbury and Drake also have part-timers. So all the numbers aren't there, all the numbers aren't jiving. All right, I think we know that. And to me, for you folks as a board, granted, everybody's looked into this. Nothing was ever asked of us from the beginning. From the beginning, we've virtually been kept out of the loop. All the information we get is last minute, or we hear that a town's gathering for a meeting and so-and-so, oh, this one dropped, this one's gonna come in, this is changing, that's that. And that's all fine and good. I wasn't up here initially arguing for a job, okay? But that information is what was given to us and what was stated at the meeting, okay? Tewksbury chief, I'll advocate, I think all my dispatchers should be in there. No guarantee of a job, okay? Talk to Neshoba, not everybody was hired. You lose some through attrition, don't get me wrong. Some people aren't gonna buy into this at all and wanna go over. Some people might choose a completely different career path, and that's understandable. But some people were not hired. Okay? Same thing down in Essex. Almost 100 dispatchers, I believe, 40 were hired. 60 people you didn't lose 60 people through attrition. Not everybody got hired. Numbers drop down in terms of what you need, or what they think, each maybe dispatcher should handle. Okay, so not all the positions are there. But I'd have to think if there were people that had CAD training and they weren't gonna have to spend overtime on training somebody on a new CAD system because they're already working it, be it part-time and they want a full-time job.
Right.
You know,
No,
so-
appreciate those comments. Thank you. If we'll have,
Let Beverly respond
yeah,
to that.
Beverly, could you respond first? And then-
What was said at the Tewksbury meeting by the town manager was that he would not guarantee anybody a job, that this is at least 2 to 3 years out. A lot changes in 2 to 3 years' time. And that was followed by the chief saying that he would strongly advocate for all of his dispatchers to be part of the center and hope that they would be and would do everything in his power to see that that happened.
Mhm.
So I think it was a little misinterpreted, I guess is a good word for it. The other thing that I wanted to point out was that the other centers that we've talked to, for example, the Southeast Regional and Emergency Communication Centers, we've been told that nobody has ever lost their job. That even in the case of the Southeast Regional Center, they had to actually advertise for dispatchers to fill all of the positions. And in this case, we're creating 3.5 more positions than we now have dispatchers. So it is our expectation that anybody who wants to migrate over to this new center would be able to do so.
Right. Thank you. And did you have any other comments on that, Paul? Questions from other members of the board for anyone?
You all done, Janet?
No, I just have a few. So, Beverly, I'm guessing this is for you. So, anticipated new requirements coming down from the state. Are there going to be grants from the state to all communities to help conform to these new requirements, or only to communities that are going to these regional centers?
That I don't know. I think that's part of what's being decided over the next 2 months, as I mentioned, based on the meeting that I had attended last Friday.
Okay. So
They're
in 2 months, we'll
restructuring-
know the answer to that?
They're restructuring all of their grant programs for the State 911 Department, but it's pretty clear that priority and better incentives will be offered to those communities that participate in a regional center. Because that is the goal of this administration, is to regionalize as many communities as possible. I think, as was mentioned previously by one of the chiefs, we have a ridiculous number of PSAPs now in Massachusetts. You look at the state of New Hampshire, they have 4. The state of Vermont has 8. And we already talked about Maryland. Even a state the size of Texas has 48. And then you look at 270 in Massachusetts. And the state is funding all of those. So they're looking to consolidate, because it does improve efficiency and it does improve the quality of service, but it also financially makes a lot more sense from the state's perspective than giving out grant funds to 270 PSAPs. They would rather see a consolidated center that's operated more efficiently, that can provide a higher level of service to their residents than what we have in place right now.
Okay. I guess my only comment on that is I don't like that communities that are not part of a regional center
Not getting.
aren't yeah.
Well, I'm
aren't
not saying
gonna
that
be
they're not
upgraded as
I'm not saying that they
quickly.
won't get funding. I'm telling you that I don't know how much it would be or if they will get funding. All that I know at this point in time after Friday's meeting is that the highest priority will be given to those centers, to those communities that regionalize.
Okay.
Excuse me, if I could bring up one point real quick.
Well, we're in the middle of questions. If
Sorry
you
to
could just be
interrupt.
brief.
My name's Christian Seminatori. I'm a dispatcher here in Chelmsford. I'm from Revere. I've been here for 15 years. Paul, how you doing? One thing that she's giving you as incorrect is the 4 PSAPs in New Hampshire. New Hampshire only handles 911. Strictly 911 and the medical end of it. They do not dispatch out to the cruisers. They do not dispatch out to the fire department. So let's make sure that that's clear. That's incorrect, ma'am. Please have your facts straight.
All right. Clarification. Do you have additional questions?
Yes. So you mentioned the state grant to help offset the costs. How long? I guess you won't know for 2 months, but how long do we anticipate that? Is that a one-time grant?
No,
Is it
that's
something gonna
an
last over
annual
5
grant,
years?
and a number of people have asked questions about the source of that funding. Every month when you get your cell phone bill, there's a surcharge on the cell phone bill. It is legislatively required that that money be spent on dispatch services. The state recently increased that surcharge as a way of leveraging additional monies for the next generation 911 rollout, which is very, very expensive, just in terms of developing the technology that will be used at the state level. When I talked about the new incentives for regional centers, we were told on Friday that a small portion of that additional revenue that's coming from the increased cell phone tax will be going to provide the incentives for the regional centers.
Okay, so part of that is going towards these updates to technology.
Right, it's $69 million for Next Generation 911 is what it's costing the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So it's incredibly expensive. So they essentially doubled the surcharge on the cell phone bills. Not that it's, so you probably don't even notice it in your bill. It's not a significant amount of money for an individual, but when you look at it collectively as a way to leverage additional revenues to pay for the Next Generation 911.
Okay. So the grant and for the state to continue to fund the updates to technology, we're not sure at this point how long that's going to last. Is that a fair statement?
No, that's not a fair statement. It would take a legislative change for that money to go away.
Okay. Okay. You had mentioned that the workers, the employees would probably receive higher salaries.
No, Paul did.
Will they? Or-
Paul said that.
No, you said that.
When we prepared the budget for this new center, we assumed that every dispatcher would be brought in at the highest pay grade, because we know that in our communities we have a fair number of experienced dispatchers. We wanted to be conservative in our cost estimates. In terms of how the salary structure is set up, that will be up to the managers to decide. That's not our call. But we wanted to be just conservative in our financial projections for the center to make sure we covered all of the cost.
And it will be negotiated.
Right. But
Correct.
we're not
Just
anticipating that
decided.
no one's going to take a wage cut. They're not, in other words, if the dispatcher in Chelmsford is earning a wage, when they go to the regional center, they're not going to take a wage cut.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
Yeah, I mean, I want them to hear it as well, because,
Yeah.
and this, these meetings are recorded and archived, so, when the time comes, it's easy to pull it up.
Okay, and in your experience, why do communities not move forward with something like this?
Well, I think in some of our communities that have decided not to move forward, it was because they feared giving up loss of local control. And what we have talked about is that in this case, this is very different from the Essex RECC, which is a hosted facility run by the sheriff's office, and the communities do not have the kind of control that they're going to have in this facility. But in this facility, we've talked about the fact that the managers and the chiefs are really the entities running the center. So the loss of local control is not there. But it is a fear that always comes up when we have these kinds of conversations.
Yeah, and if I could, because I sit on the NIMCOG board, of course, and I work with a lot of selectmen from other communities, and to be perfectly honest, and I'm sure some of you are feeling it right now, we don't like it when people come into our board and say that we're threatening public safety by something we're doing. And I can tell you personally, some of my selectmen didn't even want to bring this to a meeting because they were afraid that someone was going to come up and say you're hurting us. And that was I got that feedback from other selectmen in a few other towns who
In Westford.
they were worried about it.
In the Westford.
No, in northern Middlesex.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant your selectmen. I thought you were talking about Westford.
On NIMCOG. On the
Well, and in
council.
some of our communities, particularly Billerica and Westford, it was a big cultural leap for them because right now they have separate fire and police dispatch.
Yeah,
So
that's-
going from that to this seemed like a lot for them to do at one time.
Right, that was the other.
That was my question. How did you go from 9 to 3? That was my
Yeah.
question, but basically.
Oh, and as one of the speakers had mentioned, Lowell isn't officially out yet, but the real issue with Lowell is that the new city manager has requested that there be weighted voting, which is not
Which we don't
something that the suburban communities are amenable to. So we are doing a presentation for the Lowell City Council Public Safety Committee on September 8th, and they will take the issue up, but our expectation is that it probably will not go anywhere unless there were weighted voting, and I don't see that happening.
So they expect to vote at that
I don't believe they're going to vote that night, no, when we spoke to Manager
think so.
Murphy.
I think they are going to
Vote
vote that night.
But not the full council or just the
Full council.
Okay, okay, that's new.
The Public Safety Subcommittee will make a recommendation to the full council. We
Vote that evening.
don't expect that it will be a favorable one, but we will see.
I sit on the LRTA board, and that is a weighted vote, and it has caused a lot of problems, especially recently. As you know, I did serve 2 years, and now I'm back on again, and it's been a real bad beginning, and I'm not looking forward to starting out the year next couple of weeks. So, you know, but my experience with
I'm
the
sorry, George, I
regionalization-
can't even hear you. I got the whole air conditioner behind me,
Oh,
and
yeah,
I
that's
see your
loud.
lips
My
moving.
experience with the regionalization has not been real good through the LRTA, to be honest. And that's why I asked if the common reason for the 6 people, the 6 towns who did not, were no longer part of the.
Well, and some of the other communities are probably going to regionalize. I talked about the smaller communities wanting to be with like-sized communities. So we are presenting an option for the smaller communities for them to either become part of the Neshoba Valley RECC or to become part of Groton. Groton now does dispatching for the town of Dunstable. So Pepperell and Tingsboro, if they wish, could become part of that, or they could join the Neshoba Valley RECC. We're still suggesting that they regionalize, but not as part of this particular combination of communities.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's good clarification. Good question. I think Laura had a couple questions.
That was actually one of them. She just answered.
Okay.
I guess I
got 10.
when you mentioned
Bring the microphone. Speaking of the microphone.
you mentioned briefly that the community equipment would be also upgraded. Would that be 100% of whatever each of the town needs?
Whatever the town would need to effectively communicate with the regional centers, so that there's whatever you need physically in your community, so that the regional center can dispatch equipment, you can communicate with them, and I will let Tom speak about this because he knows a lot more about equipment than I do, so.
I mean, they do. And one of the things under a regional center is that.
Could you pull your microphone just a little closer as well? I'm sorry.
Oh, sure. One of the things that are under a regional center is that they do have access to funding for their radio systems. We've heard, actually in Tewksbury as well as here, is a number of issues that they're running in with maintaining the radio systems. And, they do have a life cycle of those. It's generally, it's going to be no more than 10 years. And it is a problem. What I have seen in other centers is that the state has provided under a regional center the ability to provide interoperability between the communities and the regional center. Actually, I'm working with 2 communities right now that are they're doing an upgrade in one community. It's an upgrade for their fire department radio system. In another, it's for the police department in another community. So that they do provide under a regional setup. They do provide those funds under a standalone public safety answering point. They do not provide those funds.
Other questions? We can jump around too if you want Bob to ask one.
Yeah. My next question was that the site that is the DPW site in Tewksbury, that's recently come open. That seems like an awful generous donation of land, and is there any kind of assumption that there will be some other compensation as a result of that? I know that we don't have a lot of land to give up, and I just question that.
Coincidentally, the town of Tewksbury was looking at that site for a fire station, so they were already doing some site work there, and that they saw this regional facility as something that would work well with their fire station should they locate it there. The town would receive incentive funds as the host community, but those funds actually go into the operation of the RECC, so they're not funds that come that are going into their general fund. And the amount of that host contribution is basically the amount equal to the grant that Chelmsford and Drake now receive from the State 911 Department every year to operate their own PSAPs. So basically, I don't know off the top of my head what that amount is, but it's probably like 150,000 or so. Is that a good estimate?
And I think that's my last question. We're saying that Essex is taking on a lot of volume right now. If we and other communities move forward with regionalization, is Essex prepared to be downsizing their regional center, or how would that work out?
Well, the State 911 Department would grant us permission to receive those calls. So I think Essex, I don't think that they would downsize because we're seeing that volume of wireless calls continually climb. So I think it would probably make it a more manageable situation for them. I think they'll quickly, whatever they lose from our calls will quickly be regained just in the growth of cell phone calls that's been occurring over time.
Thank you.
Selectman Joyce?
I just want to say that, Paul, I'm disappointed that when anybody opposes anything, you get really exasperated and raise your voice. And
I didn't think that was, I'm sorry you characterized it that way, Bob. I didn't think I was attacking the
I
speaker.
thought you were yelling, you know. But anyway, that's
think so.
beside.
I actually didn't feel like he was yelling, even though he was looking directly at me.
Yeah.
I think.
All right, well, I felt like he was yelling. Maybe it's the hearing aids, I don't know.
Maybe it's passion.
Okay, I've got several questions. I want to correct Chief Spinney because, and I don't like correcting anyone that's name is Chief, but
just me.
I believe we did have upward mobility from the dispatchers in that some dispatchers became police officers or maybe firefighters. Is that true?
I mean,
yeah, it
that
is
does
true.
happen occasionally,
Okay,
right?
okay.
As far as the career path for that career, I consider dispatching a career.
Yeah.
So if your career in dispatching is to become a police officer, then I don't consider that upward mobility for a dispatcher. I was talking within that career.
Yeah, I understand, okay. But I had heard that had happened a couple of times. George had started to address this, and that is, you started with 9, you're at 3. We know Lowell is number 4, and we know why they don't want to be in. But what about all the other cities?
The only
and
two
towns?
communities who have said that they definitely do not want to regionalize are Billerica and Westford.
Yeah.
And I had already talked about the fact that they have separate police and fire dispatch, and that it was a big cultural leap for them
What
to
about
go.
Pepperell?
Oh, Pepperell is still considering regionalizing as part, either going with Groton or going with Neshoba.
And if we could address that point a little further, actually, when we started this planning process from the beginning, our consultants have looked at multiple variations, what made the most sense, either from what the communities wanted or from just how things worked out after we looked at how each community was dispatching it. So throughout the whole process, they've looked at different setups with different communities, of 3 communities, of 5 communities. What would it look like if all 9 communities joined in? So that's been part of the process the entire time. So it's not like we had one project of 9 communities that we started with 5 years ago, and now it's been downgraded to what it is. We've looked at setups of 3 or 4 communities since the very beginning.
Yeah.
So just
Well,
to
the more the merrier, because then the price gets brought down.
Yeah. It depended on the setup, actually, in some scenarios. But
And what you see in the other ones is once they get established, the other communities join aboard. Now, the Neshoba one, I believe they've got a community coming on board next year.
Correct. They have one actually that wants to. The reason we
Bolton,
we were expecting the executive director Neshoba to come here tonight and talk a little bit about their experience. He couldn't make the meeting because he has to put together an emergency budget because Bolton, who was supposed to join in 3 months, wants to join like tomorrow. So we are seeing, growth in the centers that are being established. And actually, I won't say which one of the 2 communities who has said that they don't want to regionalize. It's now kind of mulling over whether, in fact, they might want to reconsider and at some point join this facility. So it's a reasonable expectation that there'll be other communities joining, and in this project, we are designing expansion capacity into the center, fully well expecting that there'll be others who will want to come on board at some point.
Thank you.
Okay. Just off the top of your head, how many regional centers are there for police and fire throughout the state?
There are 7 in Massachusetts right now.
There are 7?
Yes.
Okay. Chief Spinney had mentioned the fact that he has to cover his window, and that's going to be true of Tewksbury and, who's the other one?
Drake.
And if you just look at paying someone $15 an hour, and you have to have 3 shifts of them, it comes out to about $90,000. So you're $111,000. I know it's not about money, but you got almost $100,000 that you're going to have to backfill. And then he also said something about maybe he'll fill it with a police officer. Well, I don't want to backfill that with a police officer. He's more valuable on the street. And plus, the rate of a police officer is going to be higher than what a $15 an hour person is going to be. So,
I'll let the chief address that.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, would it be beneficial to the department to have an additional employee if we could afford it? I mean,
I have, with the manning I have at my disposal, the shifts would be modified for a window officer. The minimum manning would not be affected on the street. I wouldn't allow it to happen.
That means there'd be less people on the street, right, Chief?
The minimum manning would not be affected. So if my minimum manning is 6 officers, it would never drop below that. Would there be times where instead of 8 officers, there could be 7 with a window officer? To answer your question, yes.
Right.
But it would never drop below the minimum.
And if it does, you can always backfill.
Yes.
With overtime, right?
So the shift complement, and this hasn't even been decided, there's no guarantee this will be manned with an officer. My preference would be that it would be.
Right.
That way, it's one less person to call in should you have a problem.
Right.
But that being the case, the shifts would just be modified. Sometimes it would require backfilling, sometimes it wouldn't. When all my officers show up for the shift, I have more than enough than the minimum manning.
Okay.
So it would fluctuate.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
good question.
I want to get back to the fire department, the box alarms that are on the street, the pull boxes. It was said that that would have to be transferred. Boy, you get up there fast.
I did. I did.
They would have to be transferred maybe 20 miles of wire. I know there's technology out there for radio.
Yes, we're not going to be running cable up 495 to Tewksbury.
No.
Just so you know.
I didn't think so.
There is what they call a loop decoder. So you take a Gamewell master box, you take that signal, you transmit it wirelessly, but you do have to have antennas to do that.
Yeah.
There is a cost to that.
Right. And is it as reliable as having the copper that goes through all over the telephone pole?
Well, if you look at the surrounding communities, Westford's gone that way, Tewksbury's gone that way,
They have.
Drake is looking to go that way, Wilmington's gone that way.
We'll be going that way regardless, most likely.
Yes, exactly.
And we'd be going that way likely?
We're pushing to go that way, yes.
Okay. One of the things that most of the speakers have mentioned, yeah, thanks, Gary, is that it would be improved service, but I don't see improved service because if you've got dispatchers sitting on North Road, I would think that's more outside of the wireless, which I think could be resolved quicker if the wireless company stepped up and said that, the transmitters, what do they call them? Not transmitters.
And cell towers.
Cell towers.
Cell towers,
That are in Chelmsford could get assigned to go to the Chelmsford Police Department.
That's what would happen in the.
That's what would happen in a
Yeah. Well, no, but I'm saying we don't have to have a regional center in order to accomplish that. That's really not necessary.
The state
Okay.
911 department, with the setup that you have now, would not transfer those wireless calls to Chelmsford.
The PSEPs.
They don't-
They'll switch them only to RECCs, not to PSEPs. They want to make sure that there's a capacity there to be able to handle wireless calls.
I was always under the impression the state police answered the...
They did.
They used to.
Oh, they used to, and they eliminated it?
The state police they used to get answered in Framingham by the state police.
Right.
And then the
That-
state police, as the volume of 911 calls went up, got completely overwhelmed. So they
Yeah, well, it
started to
makes
parcel
sense,
them out.
actually, the state police, because I can't imagine that we're going to Essex County to have our calls, you know. Well, I got two more things, and that is, unlike some people on the board, like young Mr. Hanson, and maybe Janet, and maybe even Laura.
You too, George.
No, George isn't included in this, because George may have already experienced a call to 911. And in my history, Paul likes to call me a frequent flyer. I've had to call 911 several times. My wife has MS. She slipped a couple of times in the driveway. I have diabetes, and I don't always watch my sugar. And the nice thing is when my son gets on the phone with 911, he gets on with a guy like Rich Demers or his wife or Mr. DeFreitas, and they know everything about me. They know I'm a diabetic. They know where my house is, and as a result of that, I get better service. And it's not because I'm a selectman, because I got it before I was a selectman. But one thing I will tell you is the dispatch in order is the police arrive, the fire department arrives, and then as a lonely third, Trinity arrives. And that's the truth. And it's been on every call that I've had.
Well, keep in mind that the response will not change at all. The
No, I
same
know.
people will be responding.
I know, but I'm
And
talking
the-
about familiarity.
All of those things that you mentioned, the fact that you have diabetes, the fact that, you live at a certain address, all of that information gets entered into a record management system, which any dispatcher will be able to see
Right.
when they answer the call.
Right.
No matter whether it's in Chelmsford or if it's at a regional center.
But it's a personal touch. It's like, when we first started using the vendor for ambulances, they didn't have GPS, and they used to get lost. Now they don't because they have GPS. But there's something to be said for institutional knowledge. And I think if you remove the dispatch center from where it is today, you lose that institutional knowledge. And my closing... Paul, could you bring up the map on that?
A map?
There's a map, yeah, go forward a couple.
I know.
In her presentation?
There isn't a map in my
handout.
presentation.
Oh, that's their
packet,
handout.
yeah.
Oh, okay, all right. No, it's okay.
No.
I'm gonna hold it up, okay? There's something wrong when the white is 2/3 of the map. And the towns out here are all what I call podunk towns. They have 4,000,
Bob.
5,000. I can say it. They won't get this. But,
This is televised.
Amherst, I
He's
was
one selectman.
I was reading in the handout that Amherst doesn't even do this. They've tabled it. So I think until I see more colors on there, I don't want to be the guinea pig. So you know where I'm going with this. Thank you.
You remind me of the senator who held up the snowball. Do you know that story? Oh, goodness. Any other questions from George? Did you have any other questions?
No, I
think you asked a few. I guess I can make a few sort of closing comments. Been through this process.
I apologize for my ignorance. Are there going to be time for other people to ask questions?
Sure. We can allow a few minutes for a couple brief questions, certainly. Just as a member of the board, though, I'll provide. It's not really a public hearing, but I know there might be a few additional questions if something wasn't covered. I think we understood from the hands that there are a lot of people who came in the room tonight who may not necessarily be in favor of it. But if someone needs a clarifying question, I would maybe allow that. But I just wanted to say that Beverly, Jay, and to our consultant, appreciate the hard work that you've put into this. I know it's been a long time coming. I appreciate all the aspects of this, the concerns that have been brought up. There are a lot of benefits. I know that they may have been downplayed, but I think these are serious concerns when we're thinking about public safety. I look at this as the state 911 department is something this is pushing. Our police chief and our fire chief, who we always go to for recommendations on public safety concerns, are here tonight telling us that they think this makes sense, that this will be good for public safety in our community. So I just want to say, whenever we vote on this, I take those comments and that feedback seriously. I think we do have to look at this realistically. I don't think we would jump into this necessarily only for the money, but it's just one other aspect. When you look at this realistically, we had to close a fire station for a few years. It's been difficult for us to hire the additional police officers and firefighters that we've wanted to over the years. If we do have a few $100,000, I know we haven't earmarked anything, but we just have to think, this is the town of Chelmsford. When we have savings, it either goes to public safety, improving our infrastructure, allowing us to provide raises so we retain our good employees. When we have savings, they get reinvested in our community. It's not like the state government where they take the lottery funds and they spend it on something else. Our savings are for the town of Chelmsford to use, and having more funds available to provide public safety services or to hire additional officers down the road to make sure we have the best technology. In my opinion, all of those things make us a safer community if we have more resources available, if we can respond quicker to calls. And I just really appreciate the feedback that we've been given tonight from everybody involved. It's certainly given us a lot to think about, great comments and feedback from my fellow board members, so much appreciated. Again, I'll leave a couple minutes. If anyone has really a clarifying question or a concern, I do understand that there are a lot of people here who may be either for or against. But if anyone would like to make any final comments, I'll allow just a couple minutes. If you could keep them brief, though, respectful of the time. Thank you.
Michael Brothers, the president of the Professional Firefighters of Chelmsford. I just wanted to reiterate that there are contractual issues that have to be addressed before this moves forward with any sort of decision that the board would make. And I also just wanted to say that, we're a team, and I'm speaking as a firefighter, not the union president.
Mm-hmm.
The police, the fire, and dispatchers are a team. We work as a team. If you take one link out of that and move it to another part, we're not going to know every dispatcher over there for a while, for a long time. We might even see their face. But when we're on a really bad call and you see, and I'm seeing something that no one should see, and I hear a voice from the dispatcher that I know personally because I've gone to the dispatch center that's in Chelmsford, that brings me a little bit back to reality in that situation. And I just think, there's a lot to be said for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I appreciate that comments. All right, well, sure.
Jason McNamara, Tewksbury, Mass. I believe it was the chief who had said your radio system is going to be about $800,000 to replace its end of life. What happens in the meantime if it does just completely end? You have to replace the entire system. At that point, will the board continue to move forward with these people who are supposed to be saving you the money on this new system? What sort of expense are you going to double dip under that? That's a question I have on that. And as far as joining the communities, Tewksbury has upwards of 800 streets that I have to remember. I'm sure Chelmsford has about the same. Drake, I'm sure, is a little bit less. That's an extra burden on us to have to remember, 1,500 to 2,000 streets. That's just an obscene amount of streets to have to remember at a moment's notice. Like when Mr. Joyce calls for his diabetic reactions or whatnot. To know it right off the top of your head, it's just not going to be there. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Matt, I have just a quick question.
Sure.
Paul, is this radio infrastructure, is this on the capital plan?
Yes, it is.
For what year? Fiscal year? 17, 18?
Fiscal 18.
Fiscal 18? Okay.
We just for clarification, we have 4 dispatch stations. That's the $800,000 estimate to replace all 4. If we were to move forward with some type of regionalization, we would probably still have to replace 1, because you'd have to have a backup in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay, that's good feedback. Thank you. All right. Members of the board, I have the feeling we discussed this briefly at the beginning, and so you have already spoken this evening.
Mr. Chairman, we just want to thank you and the board and the town manager for the time this evening.
Mm-hmm.
We know it got a little heated at times, but we just want to make sure that, this is what it's all about. We're here to, make sure everything is correct, and that's what we want to do. And we applaud the board for their time and the consideration, and we thank you very much.
Yeah, you brought a lot to the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. The selectmen like to continue this to our next meeting. Do you feel comfortable voting tonight? Do a quick poll of the board. I think it was likely that we were going to postpone it so we could absorb the information, and ask any clarifying questions we might have over the next 2 weeks. But,
Just real quick, so if we vote on this at the next meeting and we vote to move forward.
Yep.
But then we hear that Lowell wants to join in, but they want a weighted vote. You then pull out.
No, I think what's on the table now is the consolidation of these three communities. We have pulled Lowell out of this.
Okay.
So what you would be voting on is consolidating with Tewksbury and Drakeit.
Okay.
Okay, good question. So would you, someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we continue the discussion and vote on this until the next meeting, which is the 14th of September.
Yes, 14th. Yep. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you again for everyone for coming. You were very respectful tonight, and that's really appreciated. Thank you again. Mr. Tom Gilroy, you saw that you were next.
Starting up again. You gotta get that one.
We doing
I almost fell asleep there. I had to stay awake.
All right, now you do. Just
I'll wait till the room clears.
Yeah, please.
A little less noise. Background noise.
I thought they were all here for your grinder pump.
No, I don't think so.
That's how it used to be, if you remember.
Do you have anything?
I don't think we have a copy.
Thank you very much.
Jay, thank you. Unsung hero.
Who's that?
Jay Donovan, he's really been.
Hold on, because I want to speak.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. Town Manager. The Grinder Pump Study Committee was
If I could have it a little quiet, please.
Can I?
I'm gonna start the
was
presentation.
reactivated.
Hold on. Do you have a question, George, before we start?
No, I was just gonna.
I'll get to.
Go ahead. I want to first. I want to thank Tom, and then I know he's got some of his people here
Yes,
with him.
I have. I'll mention them in the next slide. Right?
You could.
And I mean, I just wanted to give a little background and what just a little bit.
Sure.
I mean, you people, you started about last winter.
Well,
Right?
we started after the Springtown meeting.
And then you
Next month, yes.
The first time,
Yeah.
you went through about 6 months of,
That's right. Yeah.
well, a couple times a month meeting, and then, you put a pretty good program together. Then this year you reconvened, and all summer you've been working very, very hard on it, and I don't think there was too many things you didn't cover. I mean, I want to thank you and your committee. I want to thank, because I was a liaison, not because of, but then Paul for showing up all the time and put a tremendous amount of work into it. Mike Vanakis for showing up a few times, and as well as Gary Persichetti, and you had some additional people, Weston and Sampson, and you had the Copeland page, and but one thing I'd like to say before you get away is that, I mean, this is very, very important, and this is an important, obviously a very important issue, and that's why I think that all the town meeting reps should get together with you people, part of, some of you read your reports, go to the pre-town meeting, because this is a very big vote. You people put a tremendous amount of time into it. I mean, it was, you agreed to disagree a little bit a few times, but nobody got really disagreeable or contentious. It was,
Except me, right? Yeah.
well, yeah, but that's just your nature, though, Tommy. You know what I mean? But I mean, it was enjoyable to go to the meetings. It was very, educational, and I think that there's a lot that people aren't aware of what happened, and there's a lot of, fallacies out there. They didn't have to pay this, they didn't have to pay that. You know what I mean? And there were a lot. We did hear a lot of hardship cases. So, I just, again, thank you, and maybe, I know some of the,
Thank you.
I know Peggy was here earlier, she's probably gone.
I'll mention everybody, but thank you, George, we appreciate that, and we appreciate your attendance at our meetings.
Do we have a handout?
I sent something to Trish.
It was sent out to you electronically.
Oh.
I sent something to Trish,
Okay.
presentation. If you don't have it, I'll send it to you.
If I've got it.
we
I'll-
have it.
And the
Okay,
changes
all
they're
right.
proposing's in,
In the bylaws.
And the bylaws, right?
in the
Okay,
bylaws.
just get back to the presentation, if I may, the next slide.
warrant.
I know what it is.
Okay, the Board of Selectmen appointed 7 members. Dan Burke, Curtis Barton, Bob Chevalier,
Originally, it was 9, Tommy,
Peggy Dunn, right, Peggy Dunn, Dave Foley, Ed Safran, and myself, and the one member who could not be with us this time was Glenn Cole. He was too busy to do it this time, but we appreciate his...
Also, the town engineer.
Yes, yes, he was on it as well, right. I can't remember his name, but yes, the town engineer.
Steve Yonley.
Steve, right, exactly.
Steve Yonley. That's why there were 9.
Joyce Cote was our administrator. She did a fantastic job, and of course, George is our liaison. All of our meetings are on Chelmsford Telemedia. All of our minutes are online, and we received inputs from the Sewer Fairness Alliance, the town manager, town council, Weston and Sampson, DPW director, the sewer department superintendent, and anyone from the general public. We had many people attend our meetings, and they provided their opinions and their concerns quite openly. The mission statement of the Grinder Pump Study Committee was, as directed by the Board of Selectmen, was as follows. We were to make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen to change the town bylaws to represent the roles and responsibilities of the grinder pump owner in the town. We would update the sewer use regulations. This is an ongoing project and it's a work in process. This is done by the town, by the DPW, and it's their responsibility to do that, and they're doing that right now, and that'll be finished maybe by the end of the year, but it's a lot of work, and they're working on it right now. There are a number of people that are doing it. We also suggested that they modify the Weston and Sampson scope of work in the contract. And the reason we suggested this was during our meetings, we learned that there is another process that wasn't discussed during our last session of meetings, and there is a pump-out process required for the tanks of the owners of the grinder pumps. That tank is somewhat smaller than we remember when we had our septic systems, but nevertheless, there is a grease buildup that occurs in there, sometimes just from normal use, and other times for overuse, using grease, and that has to be removed and the thing pumped out. Now, also, if there is an excessive amount of grease in that pump, and that'll be determined by the company, then that pump out could be the responsibility of the homeowner, but that's yet to be determined. And those pump outs occur usually at between year 8 and year 10, from what I understand. Okay, and we're also developed language for the town warrant. Now, you might recall that at the spring town meeting, that warrant item was not passed by the town meeting. I believe at that time we were asking to transfer $150,000 from the sewer fairness from the sewer enterprise fund, and for some reason it didn't pass. Maybe because there was probably too much information. That's my opinion, but that's to be determined. Now, that number of $150,000 is also in a state of flux right now, and they have to determine what that number is going to be. But that will be inserted in the warrant, and there is a placeholder in there for it right now, as there is a placeholder for the bylaws, which have to be voted on by the town meeting as well. And I believe that the town council has those, Paul, and he's reviewing those now, and we should hear from him at some point, right? So that's basically what we did, and if there are any other questions that you have, we have some of our members here. I don't see anybody from the sewer department here, but nevertheless, any questions, we'll try to answer them for you.
Great. No question. I'd just say.
Questions, Paul?
Laura, did you have a question, Laura?
I have a question.
Yes.
From what I remember at town meeting, the majority of the debate revolved around how much responsibility the town had to
That's right.
replace working.
That's right.
Can you just briefly?
But did you read the bylaw change?
I have not.
Well, the
had a
bylaw
chance
change,
to-
the bylaw change should answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? That's what we tried to do. We tried to identify the roles and responsibilities of the town and the grinder pump owners, and that's how we made recommendations to change that. And you, as the Board of Selectmen, have to either agree upon that or disagree. So
Okay,
it's just our
I'll
recommendation.
look at this
Okay.
week. I've been on
Thank you.
vacation.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
It is a long document.
Anything else?
Good. I think Bob had a question. Did you have a,
No,
did
I'm
you have a
all
question,
set.
Bob?
No.
No? Any other
Set.
questions? I mean, you clarified a lot of things. You
Okay.
changed a lot of language. So
Very good. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
much appreciated.
And we'll continue to meet if we have to, okay?
As needed.
All right, thanks.
All right.
Thank
great.
you.
More questions? Thank you. Great. Very good. Wow. Move on to town manager reports.
Yeah, I'll be brief because I know the hour is getting late. We've had a lot of discussion the last 2.5 hours. Real quickly, the updated sexual harassment policy, the only updates to the policy is we had to change who the compliance officers were in the school department.
Oh, right.
Basically, we have a new superintendent, we have a new business manager, so basically, we've just inserted that, but because it is an update to the policy, I'd ask the board to formally approve this because we do have to issue this annually in accordance with our, good practices.
Any questions regarding the change? Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. That's unanimous.
The next matter regarding the Affordable Care Act policy, this is new, but this is in accordance with the new federal requirements under the Federal Affordable Care Act. And basically what it is, it's the new record-keeping requirement in terms of look back and measurement and so forth. The bottom line is we have to track the hours worked by all of our employees, and we have to actually report that to the government. And if under the Federal Affordable Care Act, and basically what it is you've got a 12-month look back, and if they've worked at least 130 hours per month, then you have to offer them benefits in the upcoming year. Where this is a particular concern is in departments that have part-time employees. That is not the predominant in the general government side of town. The library has some part-time employees. Where we're really concerned is, and we've shared this with the superintendent of schools, and he's sharing it with the school committee, is in the school department, particularly now that we're doing substitutes. So I did speak with Dr. Lang. He is familiar with the utilization of substitutes and benefits and so forth from his previous experience, and that is something that that obviously they'll be keeping an eye on as they implement their program with the new school year that comes forward. So in essence, this is a policy that's been standardized, it's been reviewed by town council, it's been reviewed by our employer. We are going to track these hours through our payroll system because as you can imagine, we do biweekly payrolls. When you enter, it's for obviously full-time employees, it's 37.5 hours, 40 per week. But obviously for all employees, if it's part-time, we enter that. And then basically we will get reports, monthly. And then Darlene's role and others is to basically keep an eye on this. And part of it is at the end of the year, you then have to send out notification that you then that employees then file with their taxes, much like we've done in Massachusetts with you get your certificate from your health insurance saying, yes, this person has, and then if you don't do it, then you get, whacked. In essence, with the new federal requirements, there's going to be a new federal form that we're going to issue at the end of the year that basically speaks to their hours and their coverage for insurance. So basically what we need is for the board to formally adopt this policy, and again, we'll coordinate it obviously on the general government side and obviously with the school side. And I can tell you in speaking to Darlene and Michelle Cresta, and this question, I know it comes up and it will come up obviously when we do the tri-board meetings, but in essence, they are synchronizing records. We will have one system, and so it will be, transparent on both sides as we're going, because as you know, we do issue all the payroll, including the school employees, and so we will be able to track it, just to make sure we're in compliance, because you don't want to have the penalties for non-compliance, so.
It's actually thankful that everything's run through Munis. It should make it a little easier to just run the reports on each employee. So.
Right.
Any questions for Paul? New procedure? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move that we approve the policy and procedure for the health insurance under the Federal Affordable Care Act as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? It's unanimous. Okay, move on to the revised draft.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our second draft, and at your next meeting on September 14th, you'll be asked, and I hope you will sign the warrant for the fall annual town meeting. That is the schedule for, October 19th is coming up real fast, and so you'll sign it on the 14th. This draft is similar to the earlier draft. There's one additional article that wasn't there the last time, and that's a second article submitted by the Board of Assessors, and this has to do with motor vehicle excise exemption for deployed military personnel, which is number 14 on the list. And in essence, what it does provide, in accordance with a local option acceptance provision under Mass General laws, is that if a resident is in service for at least 45 days in the excise calendar year, which is the calendar year, and they own or lease a vehicle, and then basically they receive an exemption on one vehicle during the course of the year. So it's part of the Valor Act and the other provisions. So the board has brought forward this recommendation, and that we accept this provision, and obviously we'll ask that of town meeting to provide a motor vehicle excise exemption for those in active military service and deployed outside of Massachusetts for at least 45 days in the excise calendar year. So that's the substantive change. The only other minor change, and it's real minor, it's actually in wording, more, is that on the article pertaining to the school department facility study, I've rephrased it in consultation. We did have a meeting with the working group of facilities last Wednesday morning with Mike Rigney, assisted me, as did Al Thomas, with Dr. Lang, Gary Persichetti, and so forth. And we're now referring to it as a comprehensive facilities assessment of the Chelmsford Public Schools. This is on the school committee's agenda for tomorrow evening, where the school committee will be considering this, and then obviously it would then come back and be on the warrant, for fall town meeting. So we're still developing the budget estimate that's being developed by Dr. Lang, based on his previous experience with a similar assessment that was done in Lowell.
What's the article on that?
That's number 9. That's number 9. I'm sorry, number 10. 10.
Yeah.
10. Right now it's 10. So that's what we have, and I'll just remind the board, again, your next meeting, you'll be asked to sign the final warrant for fall annual town meeting, and at that time, Darlene Lucier is scheduled to come in and provide you with a report. She's on vacation this week, to provide you with a report on fiscal year 15, and other related items that I know the chair had asked in terms of you also wanted the whole update on the steps she had taken regarding the accounting system and so forth. So she will be here on the 14th, and then what will happen is she'll then go to FinCom on the 17th to give them her financial report, and then she's scheduled for the tri-board on the 21st. So a lot of financial discussions as we head into mid-September.
Good. Fantastic.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Paul, I have just a quick question.
Yep.
On the cover page for the list of warrant articles, the snow and ice deficit, the 305, is that a pretty firm number? I know we're waiting for some money from the state.
Right, that's assuming we get the money that's, we've hit, the Department of Revenue will allow us to recognize the money that we're going to receive from FEMA.
Okay.
That's been submitted and approved, although it hasn't been received. And then this number also includes the amount that's in the governor's year-end fiscal 15 budget request. I'd use the word supplemental, but because the year's over, there's a different word. But basically, he's asking for a final budget proposal for 15 to close out 15. That includes the snow and ice money that Chelmsford would get. That number's net of that.
Okay.
So we've factored everything in. So we believe at the end of the day that when the legislature acts in September, and by the time we get to town meeting in October, the net number that Chelmsford will need will be 305,965.
Okay.
So that's where we'll go.
Thank you.
You're all set.
So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Before we move on, Tom, since you're still here, would it be all right if we ask you one additional question, follow up on the grinder pump changes? Sure, if you could come back up.
Sure.
I apologize, I misspoke when I said that I had not read that. I had
Okay.
definitely read this last month, and I thought there was additional changes. I'm still not clear, based on the new wording, what is the responsibility of the town when they go in for an inspection? And based
The
on...
town pays for the inspection.
The town
Pays for the inspection, right.
And then if
And then
they
if there are any
found a-
if there are any repairs required, the town pays for the repairs.
I thought the confusion at town meeting was what was considered an essential repair versus what was being recommended at
Well,
inspection
we have to at least allow the sewer department and the contractor to make that decision, whether it's an essential repair or not. If it's something that they feel, if it's not fixed, it's gonna cause a catastrophic failure for the pump, then it's an essential repair. If it's something that it can be repaired and it may last for another 3 years, that's not an essential repair. So that's the decision that the contractor and the sewer department makes. That's how that works. That's the only way you can do it in that particular type of a contract.
Okay, I just didn't really feel that was clarified
Well,
anymore
how would
than
you
it was-
suggest we do it then?
I don't know, I'm
Well,
not part of the
we discussed this at some length, and I don't know, with this type of a contract and the laws that you are under, the state requires you to do certain things. You must fix, certain things with respect to sewer lines at houses. We cannot just say we're not gonna do that, because that's a violation of the law.
I understand,
So,
yeah.
in that regard, I think that you have to allow the sewer department, who knows what the law is, and you have to allow Weston and Sampson, who has been our contractor since day one, they obviously know what the law is, to make that decision. And I think that's what we're doing here, that we specifically state in there those things that if the homeowner does, then they're responsible. And there's a list of things at the end of the bylaw which states that. But other than that, okay, unless it's like I mentioned, the excess grease. If somebody continually pours, lard down their system, I mean, that's gonna be a problem. It's not gonna work. But most people don't do that. They know what they're supposed to do. So that's what we had long discussions about this, and we haven't taken it lightly, but the town is responsible for quite a bit here. We've taken that responsibility from them because for many years they were paying the bill. They were paying some large bills, some thousands and thousands of dollars. And, in retrospect, I mean, it's too bad, but that's in the past, and we're trying to fix it for the future.
So, I think a specific example I remember might have been, a pump was loud.
Loud?
and
Well,
it-
if it's loud to the extent that
Can
the
I finish?
bearings are going,
the owner was saying that it had been like that for years.
and it hasn't broken?
Hadn't broken.
So what's the
and
problem?
So the town was now, that was now on the town's bill. And I don't see how the change of the wording has changed how we would have handled that specific example.
Well, you cannot cover every single possible eventuality in a bylaw. It's impossible. The bylaw has to treat it generally, all right? It's not specific. It's up to the contractor in the sewer department to make a decision. Now, if that loud noise was caused by bearings or something to that effect, then probably it should be repaired. If it's been doing that for years, it's probably gonna be a catastrophic failure one day, and then you'll be out of luck. So fix it. Well, it's gonna have to be fixed now. Either pay for it now or you pay for it later. And later it's gonna cost you more money because the prevailing wage goes up every year. So I mean, it's a matter of economics.
I believe the pump was replaced
Good.
in this.
So that's
this
$3,000
instance.
bucks. So that's money well spent. Okay.
I just don't see how
And-
these words clarified the heated
Well,
discussion that went on.
we would
town
be
meeting.
willing to have you come to any one of our meetings, and you could give us your expertise in that area if you have it, and we'd be more than willing to hear. We listen to everybody.
Well, yeah.
Just step right up and do it. I can't, we discussed this, and you cannot be specific on every single occasion. There are a number of things that can go wrong with these pumps. And in essence, if it goes wrong, unless the owner is at fault, we're gonna fix it. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. We're gonna fix it.
I didn't think that's what the residents who own these grinder pumps were looking for.
Well,
And I
believe
thought
me, the
that's what we
residents
asked
came
you
to these meetings in numbers, and every one of them went away happy. Nobody was unhappy.
I hope it goes as smoothly at town meeting, though.
We're trying to make everybody whole in this thing, and, you know, it's not our mission here to put a burden on anybody. And this $3,000, you know, in the scheme of things, when you figure it out over the course of, you know, all of the sewer users in town is nothing, and this money is coming out of the enterprise funds. It's not costing the taxpayers a penny. It's money that's already there. So what's the problem?
It's not there. We've asked.
No. It is there. There is money in the sewer enterprise. Don't say it's not there, because it is there.
It's in the enterprise.
It's in the enterprise fund. The money is there.
The sewer takers pay it, though.
It's paid. The sewer takers,
Yes.
every
All the
every
taxpaying sewer payers.
every sewer taker pays because of the enterprise fund, okay? Of course it's paid for, but the money is there for those particular things. And that's what now that may have to change in the future, but right now it's coming out of the enterprise fund. Okay?
No, that's good. You have an additional question?
Yeah, I got one
Laura,
question. You all done?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you.
It seems to me that at town meeting, we were presented with a very large number.
Yes, you were, and you'll never see that again.
Okay, good, I like that.
Had I had the opportunity, I would have said, that's way too much information, way too much money, and you're gonna dazzle them with too much nonsense. You shouldn't put it up there.
So none of the things in here are gonna cost us the extra money.
Well, I mean, it's gonna cost you more money, you know, it's gonna cost you money every year. The first couple of years when you do the maintenance check, that's gonna be the most.
Right, I expect
And then over the years, you're gonna have to start replacing these pumps. But it's not gonna be done, it's gonna be done, you know, over a period of years and years and years. So
I understand.
we're gonna try to keep it under $200,000 a year. That's the goal.
Yeah,
But,
okay,
you know.
good, thank you.
But not $1.8 million, no, believe me. You won't see that number again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, let that clarify.
Where are we?
As much as possible.
No appointments.
All right, next, we'll move on to agenda item number 9, the electronic signatures for view permit. So this is something that Tricia asked if we could put this on here. This is the system that the town currently uses for some other licenses and permits, and basically she's wondering if the Board of Selectmen would like to use this for our permits as well, so things could be signed electronically. Just on the administrative side, it'll make it a lot easier renewing licenses if they can be e-signed.
Right.
We still have to make an official vote at a meeting, but we won't have to actually sign every document,
that
is
makes
my
sense.
understanding. Once we take the official vote, but I think it just takes a vote of our board to adopt the, what is she worded here? Electronic signatures for viewpoint system.
I got no problem with that.
Big problem. All right, hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve that.
Is there let me see if she put a motion in here.
I don't think she put a motion in.
Okay. I move that we approve the use of electronic signatures for the licensing program for the Board of Selectmen and the licenses that they sign.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you. Move on to appointments.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just 3 appointments for your ratification this evening. The first one is for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I'm seeking your confirmation of the appointment of David Antonelli for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2018. For the Board of Appeals, Stephen Mendez of Carter Drive as an associate member for a 3-year term ending June 30th, 2018. And for the Community Action Program Committee, Ryan Reveley of Gorham Street for a 1-year term ending June 30th, 2016.
Any questions regarding those appointments?
Yeah, I have one. Mendez. Mendez is from, what street did you say?
Carter Drive.
Carter Drive. Isn't there someone already on the Board of Appeals from Carter Drive? Luna?
Last person.
Conservation Commission, but not the Board of Appeals.
What about Luna?
The last one that went on the Board of Appeals, I think, was from
Luna, a guy named Luna?
But he's not on the...
Carter Drive.
Last I saw him, he was on the Board of Appeals.
Yeah, he's on the Board of Appeals, but is he...
Can we not have people on the
Yeah, I'd say
same
with
street?
Well, no, I'm just thinking, it would be nice to have people geographically spread throughout the town. You get...
It's only an alternate.
If given a choice, but we've had this vacancy open for like 12 months.
okay.
Are people fighting for this?
There's no fight. In fact, we still have another vacancy, if you recall.
Do you?
Yes.
Beggars can't be choosers,
Maybe
Bob.
we'll give Steve a chance, but we'll keep
All
that
right.
in mind for the next guy.
We'll give him a chance.
All right.
I just, you know.
That's a fair point. Actually,
Move that we approve the appointments of David Antonelli, Stephen Mendez, and Ryan Reveley, as stated by the town manager, as appointed by the town manager.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? That was unanimous. Thank you. Move on to the meeting minutes of July 20th, 2015.
I do have a small change there on page 4 under liaison reports.
Yes.
The first one from me, the Board of Health. The public hearing regarding raising the tobacco smoking age. If you could change that to raising the purchase of tobacco age to 21. And that's all.
Any other comments or edits on the minutes? I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Move to approve the minutes of July 20th, 2015, as amended.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? That's unanimous. Selectmen liaison reports and referrals. Selectman Dixon, do you have anything for us?
I just want to, when I was giving out the kudos about the Williamsburg, I forgot, of all people, Paul put in as much work as anybody on that. I didn't mention that, so, I mean, thank you, Paul, for that. And I'm sure, and these people down in Williamsburg, Dynell Clark, who's head of one of the associations, Dave Dubinsky, who's on the board, and Jan Spence, 3 people who worked exceptionally hard as well. So, along as I said before, Jimmy Lane was very instrumental. He was doing a lot of stuff with Steve Yanley, I believe, also, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so there was a lot of people that got involved, and it's about, I think they have to come up with about $700,000. They have to move their sewer line too, down there, so the quicker they can get it done, the better, but we've been waiting for 3 years now, almost, I think.
Is the sewer line along the river?
Yeah, 8 feet, within 8 feet. Yeah. It wasn't within 8 feet, but it is now.
Selectman Joyce, do you have any referrals for us tonight?
Just one. I had a call from a resident of Muriel Drive, I guess it is, between number 4 and number 8 Muriel Drive. He smells natural gas, and he said he's had the gas company out, and they said it's not a high enough priority. And I remember reading an article, and I don't know if it was Lowell.
The Boston Globe did a big expose
Is that what it was?
regional gas across
They
the
put him in.
Commonwealth.
They put him in Audapol.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
they had across this, they had a
But
map.
if someone can smell gas when they go out for a walk, I mean, I would think that's a safety hazard.
I know that on my street, Dunshire Drive, that's a common problem. It was a problem in front of my house for about over 12 years before it was high enough that they bothered to fix it.
Yeah.
But if you continue along the circle, there are other areas where you can smell it on the other side
Yeah.
still. And it is the common policy of the gas company to wait until it hits a certain level. Typically, if you go through in the morning, because of the way the air kind of settles,
Right,
you can
yeah.
smell it very early in the morning, more than later in the afternoon, but it is
He said
definitely...
he can smell it when he's in his car, driving down the road. So that's pretty strict.
high,
yeah.
but they
Could
do
we,
use
Paul,
the
could you,
sniffers and typically rate that.
Could you ping National Grid and ask them if...
Sure, we can send a note, but
If we can get a priority or something on it, you know?
I'll send between 4 and 8
I don't want to see it go
Drive.
boom,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, I'm sure they don't either.
Over the
Yeah.
past year, I've seen several news items on Channel 5 where no problems expected and they went boom.
Mhm.
So, you know, regardless what the gas company says, if you can smell it, it should be fixed.
I mean, it'd be nice to know how long it's been since they came out to test the levels that were leaking, so.
Well, he said he
they should
first
be able to-
reported it in 2003.
You've got to continue to report it. They come by all the time,
Yeah.
and they...
All right, we'll notify
Third
National.
level.
Yeah,
National
if you could.
Grid gas that, gas
Thank you.
smell 4 to 8 Muriel Drive.
And I'm not going to bother you this week with it, but one of the bank lights is already out again, but we'll wait.
But he's not going to bother
He's
you
not gonna
with
bother
it.
you. Okay.
No, I want to wait for the second one to go out.
All right.
I think
Then we'll bother him. Because I think, Paul, didn't we change the bulbs in the center to
The
LEDs?
kid hit a long fly ball
Yes.
over the fence
Yeah.
and knocked
And
it
those
down.
two aren't.
Okay.
So, okay.
Just make sure you get it fixed before the next meeting, Paul. But
yeah.
we're not going to bother you with it.
I'm not gonna, listen, I'm not gonna rate you on this, you know, so. Won't be
You
a
all set,
goal.
Bob?
Yeah, I'm all set.
Selectman Askinberg.
Now, I have liaison reports.
Ooh.
So Board of Health, their next meeting is September 14th at 6:15 PM. The 101 Mill Road Committee, next meeting is this Wednesday at 7 PM. The town digitization project is coming along very well. They have the Board of Selectmen meetings from 1995 through 2003 have been uploaded.
Wow.
Yeah, Chelmsford Telemedia and their volunteers have done an excellent job. I really have to commend them for how quickly they're getting this going.
Your first meeting?
Let's see. School committee meeting is tomorrow evening, 7 PM. As the town manager mentioned, they're going to be discussing the comprehensive facilities assessment. They're also going to be discussing fiscal year 2015 financial review. Also, McCarthy Middle School went to a 6-day schedule, and that's something new. And I think it's something a little surprising as well. So there's going to be a lot of discussion around that because it's very different. And it's something that's new for the year.
It's like their schedule changes on a 6-day basis,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. So that was
Monday through Monday, then
implemented.
it goes Tuesday through Tuesday,
Yeah.
or whatever. yeah.
It
Yeah.
typically helps so that Monday classes don't always get the shaft for the holidays.
Right. I'm just saying, there's a new 6-day schedule at McCarthy, and it's going to be discussed.
Why did you do that?
They do have public input.
Yeah. That's why it's at their meeting. And also, from the school committee, Barbara Scar and Mike Rigney are going to be at Brick House on Wednesday morning at 8 a.m., and they are inviting folks to come out. Feel free to share ideas or concerns, nothing formal, and they hope to see you at Brick House on Wednesday morning around 8 o'clock.
Wow.
I have a
And-
question.
Not drinking 'cause they
Have
get
they
the
talked
back
about the study that the MASC was going to do? Remember that group?
There's been no further discussion about that. As a matter
Well,
of
they
fact,
had it done. Maybe, they should present it to us, I think.
Yeah.
Because they wanted that to happen before the one that we, the one that we wanted.
Okay. If you like, I can
Yeah.
talk with Al Thomas and
We
get back to
haven't-
you on that.
We haven't moved on the Department of Treasury yet. I mean, whoever it is.
DOR.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Nothing's been done on that.
Okay.
They said they wanted they wanted to do the MASC one first.
Right. Okay. I'll follow up with the chair. And that's it.
All right. Laura, do you have anything for us?
Regarding the digitization, that kind of brought to mind, is there any place that would just list past office holders? Where would I go to know who was on the Board of Selectmen for the last 30 years?
Oh, Jim Lane compiled a list that went, it's on our website. Jim Lane had one that went back to
I was in-
1655.
Oh, did he really?
Where
Yeah.
is that located on the website? Because I
Yeah.
just
I'm
gonna write a
couldn't
book.
find
I'll
it.
get you the link. The
Okay,
link,
thank
list
you.
of selectmen.
Oh,
Yeah.
send it
You
to me.
weren't on there. You weren't on there.
He went all the way back. Jim Lane went back and provided the board with a list. You were on the board, Matt. Remember, we couldn't figure out what to do with it.
Yeah,
Right.
we're gonna do
I'll get you.
something
I'll
with
get
it.
you the link. All right.
Okay, yeah,
That
any
blows
of that
my book.
historical information
Yeah.
would
Gonna write a
be
book on it.
great to
He's got
have.
it.
Regarding my liaison reports, the Shobatek, they recently approved a Chrome one-book device policy for all the students, so that's going to be going forward.
A what? What is it?
One book, everybody will be getting a laptop.
It's hard to hear.
Certainly. The Shobatek approved the Chrome one-book device policy, which every student will be getting a
Chrome.
laptop,
A tablet.
a
Oh, they're gonna
tablet.
They get tablets. A
Yeah,
Chrome,
which was
Chrome
pretty
tablet,
exciting
Oh, wow.
for 4 years that they're there. And they've also approved a 3-year contract to hire a security service to assist with their letting people in the door and things like that. They've decided to.
They don't want the receptionist to do it anymore.
They're putting in more security
Oh, okay.
for this. Let's see, the library committee A lot of conversation is revolving around this carriage house project, and one of the things that seems to have come up is that they are trying to kind of run the whole project themselves, and since Pat Maloney has sort of stepped away from the permanent building committee, who in that role would be?
Dave Duane is the chair. Dave Duane was the co-chair when Pat was on the committee. Dave now is the chair of the permanent building committee. They were scheduled to meet tomorrow evening. They postponed that meeting for 2 weeks. The filing has gone into the planning board because it was distributed last Friday from Katie Enright is also going to see me tomorrow or Wednesday to sign for the Conservation Commission, so it is progressing.
Do they have a concept picture?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
They have a concept, but it, Becky over there is pretty much running everything herself, and there really hasn't been anyone else that, in a non-librarian role, that could help out over there. So
I had lunch with Becky last Thursday, had a discussion, and I assured her that we'll get things on track again.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And community preservation did approve the to go forward with putting the article for $28.8 thousand to for the Oak Hill project. They did. So we'll
That's
be
on the
voting on that.
Warrant. It's on the draft
At the
warrant.
warrant. And the one thing they did note is that while we have been getting good bond ratings, that the bank is indicating that we're kind of at the point where we're spending as fast as we're bringing the money in on that fund. So we've got to kind of think of some new ways to go about things, or there's just not going to be money for anything big that comes up in the future.
Right, for a few years. Yeah, I know they've talked about that after a few of their last large purchases, that they might need to take a few years and cut back a little. So. Good. So,
Thank you.
referrals, it's on me.
The last thing was, did we finalize for the tri-board meeting date?
21st.
For the
Yes,
21st?
yep.
I know
We
that was,
received a lot of-
we had looked, okay.
a lot of
I just wanted
responses.
At school administrative offices, 7 p.m.
Okay.
to- Great, thank you.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Other than my other than my office hours on Thursdays from 5 to 6 up in Drum Hill at Panera. Please stop by anytime to discuss anything. That's all for this evening. Any press questions? You're the best. Thank you.
Vote to
All right.
adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you. Have a great night, everyone.
Thank you.